The Sith didn't begin with Darth Vader. What came before him was older, stranger, and in many ways, far more dangerous. For over 2,000 years, the ancient Sith Empire dominated its region of the galaxy without using lightsabers. While Jedi wielded energy blades across the Republic, Sith Lords fought with alchemical swords, forged in blood and rage, actively refusing the weapon that would later define them. This was not ignorance or poverty. Something about the lightsaber itself conflicted with what it meant to be Sith. The Legends sources reveal 7 specific reasons why almost all ancient Sith refused lightsabers, making the weapon's eventual adoption a compromise rather than an evolution of their thinking. The first reason is foundational. Lightsabers violated early Sith philosophy about power and passion. In Legends continuity, specifically the Star Wars Book of Sith by Daniel Wallace, the Sith Code establishes their core belief system. The Code teaches that peace is a lie, and only passion leads to true power. In contrast, the Jedi Code confines its followers through peace, serenity, and harmony, which the Sith saw as the passive acceptance of limitations. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hatred leads to power, and power leads to victory. Rage channeled through anger is unstoppable, and passion will always defeat peace. For the Sith, the lightsaber represented everything wrong with Jedi philosophy. The weapon embodied restraint and control, the very limitations the Sith rejected. To adopt it would mean accepting Jedi assumptions about power itself. The second reason reveals what Sith weapons actually were, extensions of the wielder's dark side essence created through blood ritual. According to legend sources, a Sith sword is enhanced by submerging it in a trough of blood spilled in anger, with its edge ground using Svoltan rhyolite to ensure it never dulls. The Sith species themselves had practiced this sword forging tradition for millennia before the Dark Jedi ever arrived on Korriban. When the exiled Dark Jedi became Sith Lords, they adopted and refined these existing methods rather than clinging to their Jedi weapons. Sith alchemy worked on both living and non-living matter, though metal was easier for apprentices to work with because there was no living cells to resist the change. According to Sources Sin, one of the first Dark Lords who chronicled these techniques, the process was not quick or simple. Creating a Sith sword required time, rage, and sacrifice. Once altered, any object touched with alchemical science would become force-sensitive itself, forever retaining a mirror imprint of its forger. The weapon carried an echo of the Sith's dark side presence even after death. This meant that wielding a Sith sword was wielding a piece of its creator's power preserved in metal. The blade also focuses the force energy of the user, giving the edge an unnatural sharpness. As the wielder grows stronger in the dark side, the blade becomes more deadly in response. The weapon adapts to its master's growth, which created a bond that went far beyond simple ownership. Warrior and weapon were connected through the Force itself, linked by the blood and rage that forged the blade. Sith swords were not just tools, but literal extensions of their maker's power. A lightsaber, by contrast, could be picked up and used by anyone with the skill to wield it. It carried no imprint of its creator, no bond with its user, and it did not grow stronger as the wielder grew stronger. It was simply a tool, efficient and effective, but ultimately lifeless. For the Sith, this made it inferior, no matter how effective it might be in combat. A weapon without connection was a weapon without meaning. The third reason exposes a philosophical divide. Lightsabers removed the physical reality of violence that the Sith valued. Legend sources preserve a statement from Comac Da, a Sith from this era, that reveals this mindset. For him, although lightsabers are a superior weapon, there is nothing quite as satisfying as feeling the warm spray of blood when one cuts through an enemy with a metal sword. The Sith wanted to experience combat fully, not at a sanitized distance. The lightsaber's energy blade killed without physical contact, without texture, without the feel of steel cutting through flesh. For a tradition built on channeling passion, rage, and anger into power, this distance went against everything they believed. The fourth reason reveals a technological reality. Early lightsabers were deeply flawed weapons during the era when the Sith Empire was founded. The earliest lightsabers were crude devices that used experimental frozen blaster technology to create an energy beam of a fixed length. Designed mainly for siege warfare, these archaic lightsabers were barely portable. Their energy needs required a flexible cable connecting the lightsaber's handle to a power pack worn on a Jedi's belt. The cable was not shielded and literally tied a Jedi to the lightsaber, creating an obvious weakness in personal combat. These weapons, sometimes called proto-sabers, were not practical for the kind of fighting the Sith valued. Movement was severely restricted by the tether. The cable itself could be cut by an opponent, instantly disabling the weapon. The power pack strapped to the user's belt became a vulnerable target. An enemy could destroy it, deplete it, or simply force prolonged combat until the energy cell ran dry. For warriors who relied on aggressive, close-quarters combat channeling dark-side rage, these limitations were unacceptable. The timeline makes this even clearer. During the 100-year darkness around 7000 BBY, when the Dark Jedi were defeated and exiled, lightsabers had improved somewhat, but each still required a plug-in power pack attached to the user's belt. This was the state of the technology when those exiles discovered the Sith species and founded the Sith Empire. Their descendants did not use lightsabers during the Great Hyperspace War approximately 2,000 years later, choosing instead to invest in the alchemical weapons they saw as superior to what the Republic possessed. Throughout nearly the entire Golden Age, lightsabers remained technologically inferior to Sith swords. Even when Sith engineers developed internal power cells during the Great Hyperspace War itself, solving the proto-saber's fatal flaws, the Sith forces continued wielding their traditional blades in battle. The weapon they were refusing was no longer technologically inferior, yet they refused it still. This reveals that their choice had always been cultural rather than practical. The fifth reason demonstrates practical superiority. Sith swords were more effective in combat than early lightsabers. The combat advantages were clear. Sith swords are effective against lightsabers because their alchemically altered metal refracts the lightsaber's energy while retaining rigidity and sharpness. A lightsaber cuts through ordinary metal easily, but a Sith sword's alchemical properties allow it to interact with the energy rather than being destroyed. Unlike ancient lightsabers, Sith swords require no power packs or energy cells. This gave them a major advantage in sustained combat. They could deflect blaster bolts just as easily as lightsabers while having no technological weaknesses to exploit. With no cables or power cells, the weapon was always ready at full strength. Darkside wielders could also channel their force power directly into the weapon itself. When calling upon the dark side, they could add that power to the sword's damage, rather than just their accuracy. This increased the blade's killing power in ways impossible with early lightsabers. When wielded by a trained Sith warrior, a Sith sword was often a match for a lightsaber in single combat. The weapon's effectiveness was never in question. The later shift to lightsabers came from different factors entirely. The sixth reason exposes a historical reality. War eventually forced compromise on even deeply held traditions. In the legend source Star Wars: The Essential Atlas by Jason Fry and Daniel Wallace, it documents the Great Hyperspace War in 5000 BBY with specific details about the weapons used. Republic defenders struggled against strange invaders who wielded weapons of alien design. When Sith forces reached Coruscant's legislative district, Jedi defenders stood shoulder to shoulder with lightsabers drawn as a last line of defense. The contrast was clear. Sith wielded traditional weapons while Jedi used lightsabers. The Sith had built an interstellar empire with advanced starships, alchemy, and sophisticated force techniques. Yet, they chose traditional arms because those weapons reflected their values in ways technology could not. Visual records, from Star Wars Tales of the Jedi comics by Kevin J. Anderson provide direct confirmation of this weapon choice. In the Golden Age of the Sith, Issue 2, Sith Lords Naga Sadow and Ludo Kresh are shown wielding traditional metal swords during their succession duel around 5000 BBY. These were the two most powerful Sith competing for supremacy after the previous Dark Lord's death. At the highest level of their civilization, during a formal challenge for ultimate power, they wielded traditional Sith swords wreathed in darkside energy. In The Fall of the Sith Empire Issues 3 and 4, battle scenes from the Great Hyperspace War show Sith ground troops and Massassi warriors armed with swords, axes, and pole arms fighting against Jedi with blue lightsabers. The visual contrast appears repeatedly throughout the invasion. The first recorded Sith to use a lightsaber was not a traditional Sith at all. The earliest record of a Sith using a lightsaber was Frida Nad, a former Jedi apprentice who learned the ways of the Sith from the spirit of Naga Sadow. This occurred around 4400 BBY, approximately 400 years after Sadow's death during the Great Hyperspace War. The timeline is significant. For over a millennium after their civilization fell, no Sith had adopted the lightsaber. Nad was a fallen Jedi who brought his weapon when he turned to the dark side. When he awakened Sadow's spirit on Yavin 4 and learned Sith sorcery, there is no record of lightsaber instruction. The ancient Dark Lord taught traditional Sith methods even to a student who already knew how to wield a lightsaber. Sadow chose to preserve the old ways rather than adapt to what his student brought. More than 300 years later, Exar Kun modified his own lightsaber into a double-bladed weapon by following instructions from a Sith holocron. The knowledge existed in Sith archives, but was not actively practiced. Lightsaber adoption came from outside Sith culture, imported by Jedi defectors rather than developed from within. The seventh reason reveals persistence. Traditional weapons remained dominant throughout the Sith Empire's existence. Sith swords remained the weapon of choice from the Empire's founding to its fall. This was not a slow transition or gradual acceptance of lightsabers. The ancient Sith maintained their weapon traditions consistently across their entire civilization, only abandoning them when the Empire itself collapsed. The archaeological and historical record shows no period of mixed use, no gradual shift in preference. It was a total commitment to their alchemical blades until the civilization that created them ceased to exist. Even in later eras, after lightsabers had become common among Sith, the old weapon traditions were remembered as more than just relics. They represented a different understanding of what it meant to wield the dark side, a connection to power that later Sith had lost or abandoned. Understanding this choice requires seeing past efficiency. The contrast between these two weapons reveals everything about the ancient Sith worldview. The ancient Sith operated from a worldview their descendants would not share. For them, the weapon's creation through blood ritual was inseparable from its power. Later Sith would adopt different methods, not because they had forgotten, but because they served different purposes in different times. However, for 2,000 years, this weapon tradition held. It defined what it meant to be Sith during the Golden Age, before fallen Jedi brought their lightsabers into the culture. The philosophical conflicts between tradition and adaptation would continue shaping every generation that followed. And those conflicts never stayed abstract for long. The ancient Sith didn't just theorize about passion and power, they acted on it, again and again, in ways that still define what it means to be Sith. Some of those acts were calculated, some were monstrous, and some were both. What follows is a ranking of the worst of them, the single choices that exposed each Sith Lord for exactly what they were.
Killing billions is easier than killing someone who trusts you, because the moment a Sith learns that lesson, restraint disappears. The Sith have toppled governments, ended civilizations, and reshaped the galaxy through fear and violence. After going through both Canon and Legends, this ranking judges each Sith by the single choice that exposes who they truly were at their worst. and it begins with a betrayal that every Sith apprentice is expected to commit. Darth Plagueis killed his master while Tenebris was trying to save them both. In the Darth Plagueis novel, a mining probe malfunctioned on the volcanic world of Baldemnik. When lethane gas ignited, the explosion tore through the tunnel system, and the cave began to collapse. Plagueis and his master fled towards the surface as massive crystal formations broke free from the ceiling. As they reached their ship, Tenebris sensed his own death approaching and used the Force to hold back falling slabs that threatened to bury them both. That was when Plagueis saw his chance. He redirected his power and brought the ceiling down on Tenebris instead. The Bith was crushed beneath stone, a stalactite piercing his chest like a spear. He died knowing exactly what had happened. His final words acknowledged the truth. Better this way than dying at his apprentice's hand in a fair fight. Betrayal becomes tradition when you call it the rule of two. Plagueis made a calculated choice to kill his master at the moment he was most vulnerable. Within Sith tradition, that betrayal is expected. It is how an apprentice proves they have surpassed the teacher. That makes it evil, but not exceptional. Plagueis did what every Sith apprentice is supposed to do. While Plagueis killed in private, the next Sith wanted witnesses. Exar Kun chose to execute a Jedi Master in the Galactic Senate instead of anywhere private because he wanted the galaxy to watch. Vodo Siask Boss had trained Kun as a Jedi Knight and taught him to resist the dark side. When Kun fell and declared himself Dark Lord of the Sith, Vodo traveled to Coruscant for one last attempt at redemption. In the Old Republic Encyclopedia, Kun marched into the Senate Tower with his Massassi warriors during the Ulic Keldroma's trial. He subdued the assembly with his Force abilities and humiliated the Supreme Chancellor. When Vodo entered and challenged his former student, he carried only his wooden staff and pleaded with Kun to remember his training. Kun could have refused to fight. He could have left. He could have taken the confrontation somewhere else. Instead, he ignited his double-bladed lightsaber in front of the subdued senators and diplomats. Vodo fell while Republic officials watched in horror. Kun transformed a personal betrayal into a political spectacle. He selected the center of galactic government to announce that no Jedi could save him. The message was unmistakable. Redemption was no longer possible, and anyone who tried would die the same way. Some Sith kill their teachers, but one built an entire war on lies. Nagasato killed his own people and framed the Republic to start a war that served only his ambition. When Gav and Jory Darrigan accidentally entered Sith territory, most Sith Lords saw them as a minor problem needing elimination. On the other hand, Sato saw a chance to seize power. In the Tales of the Jedi comics, he staged a rescue of the imprisoned explorers. His Massassi warriors attacked the Sith prison and killed the guards. Sato himself eliminated Simus and left a Republic blaster behind, making it look like the Republic had launched a military strike. The Sith Empire believed they were under invasion. Sato could have told the Council what really happened. He could have simply dealt with the explorers. Instead, he orchestrated a false flag operation and manipulated the entire Empire into demanding war. The Council named him Dark Lord of the Sith to lead the response, and he launched a full invasion of Republic space, turning Jory Darrigan's ship into an unwitting beacon for his forces. Thousands died in the conflict that followed, and planets burned. When Ludo Kresh discovered the truth, Sato had him killed to protect the lie. Sato never met most of the people his deception killed. He simply set the events in motion and let momentum do the rest. At least, Sato's victims believed they were fighting an enemy, but the next Sith killed to inflict emotional suffering on a single person. Darth Maul killed Duchess Satine Kryze in front of Obi-Wan Kenobi to make him suffer. Maul had already lost everything to Kenobi years earlier on Naboo. He survived that defeat broken, sustained only by rage and hatred, and rebuilt himself through the dark side. When he finally had the chance for revenge, he did not choose a quick or clean death. He wanted Kenobi to feel the same loss that defined his own existence. After conquering Mandalore, Maul captured both Satine and Kenobi and brought them into the throne room. In the Clone Wars episode The Lawless, Satine stood unarmed beside the man she loved, while Kenobi was forced to watch. Maul used the Force to choke her slowly, pressing Kenobi to give in to anger and strike back. However, Kenobi refused. He called Maul weak for choosing the dark side and for needing cruelty to feel powerful. And that refusal sealed Satine's fate. Maul ignited the darksaber, pulled Satine towards it, and impaled her in front of him. She collapsed into Kenobi's arms, used her final moments to tell him that she had always loved him, and died while he held her. Maul did not allow Kenobi the release of death. He ordered his guards to imprison him beneath the palace, ensuring that Kenobi would live with the memory of that moment instead of escaping it. Maul could have killed Kenobi directly. He could have killed Satine without witnesses. Instead, he turned love into a weapon and suffering into the objective. Kenobi's survival was the point. While Maul killed to torment one man, the next Sith sabotaged hope itself to start a war. Darth Krayt sabotaged a humanitarian project meant to heal 100 war-ravaged worlds and used its failure as the pretext for a galactic war. After the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, more than 100 planets had been left shattered and uninhabitable. Decades later, Jedi Master Cal Skywalker proposed a way to undo that damage. Working with Yuuzhan Vong shapers, the Jedi launched the Osis project, an effort to use Vong biotechnology to restore ruined worlds. Osis was Heal First, transformed from wasteland into living planet. The Galactic Alliance approved the plan to expand the project to 100 more worlds. Krayt understood exactly how fragile that hope was. Years earlier, he had been captured by the Yuuzhan Vong in the unknown regions and subjected to their experiments. The Star Wars Legacy comics reveal that the Vong parasites were embedded in his body, slowly consuming him from within. He knew how deeply the galaxy feared Vong biotechnology, and he knew how easily that fear could be weaponized. Krayt's Sith sabotaged the Osis project from within. As described in the Essential Guide to Warfare, the restored worlds began to change. Bony growths erupted from the ground, echoing the horrors inflicted on Vong captives during the invasion. Plants and animals twisted into grotesque forms. What had been a symbol of healing became a nightmare. The Jedi insisted that the project had been sabotaged and defended the Yuuzhan Vong shapers. The Galactic Alliance backed them. Imperial Moff seized the moment. In 127 ABY, they declared war, claiming the project proved the Vong could never be trusted. Krayt stepped forward as an ally. Together, his Sith and the Empire won victory after victory. At Kamas, they crushed Alliance forces and forced a surrender. Then, Krayt revealed the true purpose behind the war. He led the massacre at Osis, where Sith and Imperial troops slaughtered the Jedi who had withdrawn to the restored world. Days later, he betrayed Emperor Roan Fel and declared himself ruler of a new Sith Empire. Krayt did not just start a war, he corrupted an act of healing into a weapon. He turned an entire species into scapegoats and transformed a humanitarian effort meant to restore 100 worlds into a spark that nearly erased the Jedi Order. While Krayt sabotaged hope itself to ignite a war, the next Sith struck the Jedi Temple while diplomats negotiated peace. On Alderaan, Republic and Empire diplomats were negotiating an end to the war. At the same time, Darth Malgus entered the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. He cut down the guards at the entrance and advanced into the main hall, where Jedi Master Ven Zalo and his apprentices prepared to defend their sanctuary. As Malgus approached them, the chronometer on his wrist began to beep, signaling that a dropship was 90 seconds away. Malgus stopped moving and waited. According to the Old Republic Deceived, a hijacked military dropship smashed through the temple's front facade at full speed. It tore through stone columns, killed dozens of Jedi on impact, and ignited fires throughout the building. When the ship came to a halt, its hatch burst open, and Sith warriors charged into the temple with their lightsabers ignited. Malgus could have honored the ceasefire, or allowed negotiations to continue. Instead, he timed his attack to coincide with peace talks, turning the hope of reconciliation into a trap. While both sides believed an end to the war was possible, Malgus slaughtered Jedi in their own temple. The Republic surrendered rather than watch the Order be destroyed. The Jedi believed negotiations offered protection. Malgus proved that peace was only another weapon to the Sith. That betrayal mattered because the next Sith ended resistance by destroying the planet that held the truth. Darth Malgus destroyed the planet Taris to kill a single Jedi who had escaped him. Bastila Shan was a Jedi Padawan who had evaded Malgus' forces and crashed on Taris. She was hiding somewhere in the city levels below, and Malgus' troops were searching for her. She could have continued the search or waited for intelligence to locate her. Instead, he chose a solution that required no patience at all. In Knights of the Old Republic, Taris is shown as a world of towering city levels packed with civilians. Malgus ordered his fleet into orbit and gave the command to fire. The bombardment did not stop. With no planetary defenses and no way to fight back, Taris was burned down to molten slag. City levels collapsed one after another, and billions of people died. An entire inhabited world was reduced to a problem that needed to be cleared away. Malgus at least destroyed a planet to eliminate an external threat, but the next Sith killed his own soldiers to secure victory. Darth Revan lured thousands of his own Republic soldiers to Malachor V and activated a super weapon that killed them alongside the Mandalorian fleet. The Mandalorian Wars had dragged on for years. Knights of the Old Republic 2 describes Revan ordering the activation of the Mass Shadow Generator, an ancient Sith weapon that warped gravity itself. The weapon tore both fleets apart without discrimination. Ships imploded as gravity crushed their hulls. Thousands of soldiers from both sides died instantly. The battle ended and Malachor V became a gravestone marked by screaming Force echoes. Revan could have used the weapon on the Mandalorians alone. He chose to position his own troops in the blast radius. The Republic soldiers who died there were not collateral damage, but part of the calculation. Revan gathered them, knowing the Mass Shadow Generator would consume them all. The Mandalorians were walking into a trap. Thousands of Republic soldiers followed him there, trusting his command, unaware that their doom had already been accepted as the price of victory. Revan's victims were soldiers who chose to follow him into war, but the next Sith killed a fellow Jedi who offered him redemption. Count Dooku killed Jedi Master Yaddle to prove his loyalty to Darth Sidious. Qui-Gon Jinn had just been killed by Darth Maul, and Dooku was still grieving the loss of his former apprentice when Yaddle followed him to a secret meeting with Darth Sidious in Coruscant's Works District. In Tales of the Jedi, she overheard Dooku confessing that he had betrayed Sifo Dyas, arranged the creation of the clone army on Kamino, and sacrificed his place in the Jedi Order in service to the Sith. When Yaddle confronted them, she did not attack. She appealed to the man she still believed could be saved, and told Dooku that there was still time to undo what he had done and help her bring Sidious to justice. Sidious responded by turning the moment into a test, forcing Dooku to choose between killing Yaddle to prove his loyalty or losing everything he had already sacrificed. Dooku ignited his lightsaber and fought Yaddle through the hangar as she continued to plead with him. She told him that she had stepped down from the Jedi Council because he had been right about many of its failures, and she reminded him that Qui-Gon Jinn did not have to die. Even then, she believed his actions were driven by grief rather than cruelty. Dooku answered by using the Force to lower a massive hangar gate, crushing Yaddle beneath it. When she survived and used her remaining strength to lift the gate, she looked up at him and told him that too many had already suffered for what he called order. Dooku responded by telling her that he only wanted to bring peace to the galaxy before striking her down with his lightsaber. Yaddle died believing Dooku could still be redeemed, while Dooku killed her knowing that redemption was no longer possible. While Dooku killed a fellow Jedi to secure his place beside Sidious, the next Sith manipulated hundreds of Sith Lords into destroying themselves. Darth Bane manipulated the entire Brotherhood of Darkness into using a weapon he knew would kill them all. The 7th Battle of Ruusan was turning against the Sith. Lord Khan, the leader of the Brotherhood of Darkness, was desperate for something that could break the Jedi Army of Light and end the war. Bane approached him with what looked like an olive branch. As described in Path of Destruction, he sent Khan instructions for creating a thought bomb, presenting it as a peace offering. The pages looked ordinary, just cramped writing on thin sheets of flimsy, but they described one of the most dangerous weapons the Sith had ever created. The ritual promised overwhelming power, a blast of dark side energy capable of destroying entire Jedi armies if multiple Sith focused their will together. What Khan did not understand was the cost. The thought bomb would not spare its creators. When activated, it would destroy every Force-sensitive being within range, Jedi and Sith alike. Worse than death, their spirits would be drawn into the weapon's core and trapped together in frozen stasis, locked in the instant of their destruction with no escape and no release. Khan believed the Brotherhood's combined dark side power would protect them. Bane encouraged that belief and let desperation do the rest. Inside the caves of Ruusan, Khan gathered every Sith Lord who still followed him. Together they began the ritual, retreating underground and channeling their power into a single weapon. When the thought bomb detonated, a sphere of pure Force energy tore through the caverns. Every Jedi in the caves died instantly. Every Sith Lord died with them. Hundreds of Sith vanished in a single moment. Their spirits pulled into the weapon exactly as Bane had intended. He remained safely outside the blast radius, watching as the Brotherhood destroyed itself. The Sith, who believed they were about to win the war, never realized that they had been manipulated into their own annihilation. Bane understood exactly what Khan needed to hear. He shaped a lie that appealed to hope and wrapped it in the language of reconciliation. He did not defeat the Brotherhood through strength or strategy. He convinced them to erase themselves. Bane believed the Sith were weakened by numbers, that true power could only survive through one master and one apprentice. So he eliminated every Sith who believed otherwise, using their faith in unity as the weapon that ended them. Bane's betrayal wiped out the Sith as an organization. The next act on this list would be smaller in scale, but far more personal. It destroyed a family. Darth Krayt killed his Aunt Mara Jade Skywalker to complete his transformation into a Sith Lord. Jacen Solo had been a Jedi hero of the war against the Yuuzhan Vong. Then Lumia corrupted him, teaching him that the Sith path offered the power to protect those he loved. To complete his transformation into Darth Krayt, Lumia told him the prophecy was clear. Only by killing what he loved most would he achieve true Sith mastery. Mara Jade was a former Emperor's Hand who had found redemption as a Jedi Master. She had taught him, fought beside him, and watched him grow from a boy into a man. She also suspected what he was becoming. In the Legacy of the Force novel, Sacrifice, when she confronted him, lightsabers ignited. The fight was vicious. Mara was skilled, experienced, and fighting for her son Ben's life. Jacen was younger, stronger, and desperate to complete his transformation. He used a poison dart to weaken her, then drove his lightsaber through her as she fell. As Mara died, Jacen felt the Force shift. He had killed family, someone who loved him, someone he had loved in return. Darth Krayt had been born. The act itself became the transformation. Jacen destroyed what he loved because destroying it would make him powerful. However, Jacen at least killed someone who could fight back, whereas the next Sith targeted those with no defense at all. Order 66 had been given, and clone troopers across the galaxy turned on their Jedi generals. On Coruscant, the Jedi Temple came under assault. Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, led the 501st Legion through the halls. He cut down Jedi Masters and Temple Guards, killing anyone who stood between him and Palpatine's vision of the new Empire. Then, he found the younglings hiding in the Council Chamber. They were children, some barely able to hold training sabers. Revenge of the Sith shows one child stepping forward when Vader entered and asking for help. The youngling recognized him as Master Skywalker. The child felt relieved because the hero of the Clone Wars had come to save them. However, instead of saving them, Vader ignited his lightsaber. The Sith Lord could have walked away or told Palpatine they'd escaped. Instead, he drew his weapon and ended their lives. While Vader killed children who trusted him, the next Sith consumed an entire species. Darth Nihilus consumed every living being on the planet Katar because he was hungry. The Jedi had called a secret convocation on Katar a Miraluka colony world. They gathered to discuss the future of the Jedi Order, which had been devastated by the first Jedi purge. Masters from across the galaxy assembled, hoping to rebuild. Nihilus was a wound in the Force, a hunger given form. He fed on Force-sensitive beings, draining their life energy to sustain his broken existence. In the game Knights of the Old Republic 2, when he sensed the gathering of Jedi on Katar, he saw not people, but food. His ship approached the planet. He reached out through the Force and devoured everything. The Miraluka population, every man, woman, and child, died in moments. Their life force was ripped away, consumed by Nihilus's hunger. The Jedi Convocation was obliterated. Masters who had survived wars and battles died helplessly as their very essence was torn from their bodies. The planet was left empty. Katar had been home to millions. After Nihilus finished feeding, there was only silence. Every other Sith on this list made choices. They had goals and wanted something. Nihilus just wanted to feed. He did not agonize over the choice, justify it, or plan it. He simply consumed, and Katar died. The Miraluka were a species connected to the Force, and that connection became the thing that killed them. While Nihilus consumed millions in moments, the final Sith engineered the extermination of an entire order across the galaxy. Darth Sidious engineered a galactic war to position thousands of Jedi across hundreds of worlds so clone troopers could kill them all at once. The Clone Wars had raged for years. Jedi served as generals, leading Republic forces against the Separatist threat. They did not know the clones they commanded had been programmed with contingency orders. They did not know their leader, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, was actually Darth Sidious. They did not know that every battle, every victory, every moment of trust between Jedi and clone had been building towards this. From his office on Coruscant, Sidious sent a simple message across the galaxy. In the Revenge of the Sith film, he transmitted the command Execute Order 66. Across hundreds of worlds, clone troopers received the order and turned on the Jedi, leading them without hesitation. Blasters opened fire on warriors who had fought beside them for years. On Megiddo, Ki-Adi-Mundi died surrounded by troops he had commanded. On Felucia, Aayla Secura fell. Over Cato Neimoidia, Plo Koon's starfighter was shot down. Across the galaxy, Jedi died, cut down by soldiers they had trusted. Within a single day, the Jedi Order, which had stood for thousands of years, was nearly extinguished. The war itself had been a trap. Sidious manufactured the conflict and created the clone army specifically to include Order 66 in their programming. He scattered the Jedi across the galaxy, isolated them from support, and built relationships with the troops who would eventually kill them. Every battle positioned the pieces exactly where he needed them. And unlike every other Sith on this list, Sidious won. The Jedi Order was destroyed. The Republic fell. He became Emperor and reshaped the galaxy. Every other Sith was eventually defeated, but Sidious succeeded. The Sith believed that evil was a tool, something that could be used, controlled, and set aside once it had served its purpose. Every act on this list proves the opposite. Once a line is crossed, it does not stay contained. It spreads outwards, reshaping the one who commits it and the galaxy forced to live with the result. Some of these Sith ruled empires, while others died alone, consumed by the consequences of their own choices. In the end, their power, their victories, and even their survival mattered far less than the moment they decided another life, another world, or another future was acceptable to lose. That is what the Sith ultimately leave behind. They do not leave strength, order, or freedom. They leave an absence, carved into the galaxy by the choices they were willing to make.
But of every Sith on that list, none left a larger absence than the one who spent 1,500 years filling himself with everything else that lived. Darth Nihilus consumed a planet because he was hungry. Darth Sidious dismantled an entire order because he was patient. And then there was Valkorion, a man who consumed an entire world at 13 years old, built 2 empires, and still wasn't satisfied. This is the full story of Valkorion, the immortal Sith Emperor who consumed entire worlds of life to save himself from death and ruled for 1,500 years. Now you'll discover how he almost destroyed the galaxy 3 times, created the most powerful fleet in Star Wars history, and why his own children became the weapons that finally brought him down. Child of Shadows, a legend story. Our story begins in 5113 BBY on a farming world called Medrias, where a child named Tenebrae was born. From the moment he drew his first breath, everyone around him knew that something was wrong with this infant, who never cried like normal babies and showed no emotion at all. There was a reason for his darkness that would soon become clear, because Tenebrae's mother had kept a terrible secret that would shape the galaxy's future. She had had an affair with Sith Lord Drameth, which meant that Tenebrae carried pure Sith blood in his veins. For 6 years, this deadly secret stayed hidden from the man who raised him. But when his stepfather finally discovered the truth, he attacked Tenebrae's mother in a rage that would change everything. Because when Tenebrae felt his stepfather's raw anger flooding through the Force like hot metal, he realized he could feed on it hungrily. With this dark craving driving him, he snapped the man's neck with the Force. Instead of being scared by what he had done, Tenebrae smiled with real pleasure. He had just discovered that pain and fear made him stronger than anything else in the world. Once he understood this terrible truth, he immediately decided to get much more of both by hurting the people around him. For months afterward, Tenebrae tortured his own mother. This wasn't random cruelty, but careful testing, as he fed on her terror like a hungry animal while studying exactly how different types of suffering could make his power in the Force grow stronger. When he finally killed her, it was with cold planning. Still, only 6, he had already become a monster. With his powers growing stronger through each act of cruelty, by age 10, he had taken over large parts of Medrias through fear and murder. But his greatest test was still ahead, confronting the very Sith Lord whose blood ran through his veins. The Father's Legacy. When Tenebrae was 10 years old, his true father came looking for him. Sith Lord Drameth had heard strange stories about a powerful child on Medrias who claimed to be his son. Curious about these disturbing reports, he wanted to see the boy for himself. The meeting was short and deadly. When Drameth tried to control his son's mind like any other Sith would, Tenebrae did something that should have been impossible. He turned the attack back on his father, stealing away all of Drameth's Force power and driving the ancient Sith Lord completely insane before killing him. Not satisfied with just murder, Tenebrae tapped his father's spirit like a prisoner, keeping Drameth's soul as a weapon he planned to use against his enemies in the future. Now with his father dead, Tenebrae spent the following 3 years taking over the rest of Medrias. By age 13, he controlled the entire world and was ready for the next step in his rise to power. He went to meet Dark Lord Marka Ragnos, who ruled the Sith Empire at the time. Ragnos was so impressed by what the boy had done that he made Tenebrae an official Sith Lord, giving him the new name Lord Vitiate and letting him rule his world, which Vitiate immediately named Nathema. But even with official recognition and his own world to command, his darkest act was still to come. The Consuming Darkness. Lord Vitiate ruled Nathema with iron control for over a century, but then disaster struck. In 5000 BBY, the Sith Empire suffered its greatest defeat in the Great Hyperspace War, as their assault on the Galactic Republic failed miserably, forcing the surviving Sith Lords to flee back to their territories in disgrace. While others saw only failure, Vitiate's smart mind saw a great opportunity hidden within this crushing defeat. He sent a message across the broken Sith Empire. The message promised a special ritual that would give them ultimate power to destroy the Jedi forever. But the thousands of Sith Lords who answered his call had no idea they were walking into a trap. When they arrived on Nathema expecting salvation and ultimate power, Vitiate revealed his true plan. By then, it was far too late to escape. He seized control of all their minds at once in a display of power that should have been impossible. But his hunger went far beyond the assembled Force users. He consumed every living thing on the entire planet. Every death fed more dark side energy into his being, while stripping the Force itself from the world. When the ritual ended, Nathema was completely dead. In exchange for this mass murder, Vitiate achieved something no Force user had ever done before: true immortality. But his hunger was not stilled yet, as he would spend the next 1,000 years building an empire that could finally give him the power he craved. Empire of Shadows. With Nathema dead and his immortality secured, the now Emperor of the Sith began his next phase of conquest. For 2 decades, he hid in the unknown regions, gathering the surviving Sith who had escaped the Republic's purge. The Emperor led these survivors on a 20-year journey through unknown regions until, in 4980 BBY, they discovered Dromund Kaas, a world perfect for rebuilding the Sith Empire from its ashes. Learning from the past, the Emperor carefully studied the old Empire's greatest failures. He created a totally new system of government where the Dark Council would handle day-to-day operations, while he retreated into the shadows to become the secret ruler. His greatest trick was starting the devastating Mandalorian Wars that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Few understood the true puppet master behind the conflict that claimed millions of lives. To begin this carefully planned war, he secretly convinced the Mandalorians to attack the Republic. First, he sent a Sith messenger who planted visions of great conquest in Mandalore the Ultimate's mind, pushing the warrior clans into open war against the Republic. His real purpose was testing the Republic's military strength and political resolve under extreme pressure. Young Jedi Knights named Revan and Malak began investigating the war's mysterious true cause and eventually tracked him to Dromund Kaas. The Emperor had been expecting their arrival for years and took control of their minds completely, using techniques perfected on 8,000 Sith Lords. He changed the idealistic Jedi into Darth Revan and Darth Malak before sending them back to Republic space with orders to weaken the Republic for his invasion. But the Emperor made a crucial mistake that would haunt him for centuries. Revan and Malak had stronger wills than he expected and broke free from his mental control to find the ancient Starforge by themselves. They used the Starforge to build their own Sith Empire, and the resulting Jedi Civil War nearly destroyed the entire Jedi Order while serving his purposes, even if it didn't happen according to plan. When Revan was eventually captured, the Emperor kept him in stasis for over 300 years. But Revan's constant resistance slowed the Emperor's plans and weakened his connection to the dark side. Despite these unexpected setbacks, the Emperor remained patient because he had unlimited time to achieve his goals, while mortal beings could only oppose him for a few decades at most. But his true final goal was far more terrible than conquering the Republic or destroying the Jedi Order. Every war and every death was merely fuel for his final plan, where, when the last living thing in the universe finally died, he would enjoy perfect peace and wait for the cycle to begin again. The Emperor didn't want to rule the galaxy, he wanted to consume it completely. So for the next 1,000 years, he played puppet master from the shadows, always testing, always planning, until in 3681 BBY, his Sith Empire finally came out of hiding and started the Great Galactic War against the Republic. For 30 years, the galaxy burned as his armies took over world after world, even attacking Coruscant itself. Only when he got distracted by other plans did he agree to the Treaty of Coruscant in 3650Y BBY, leaving both sides stuck in an uneasy peace. While this devastating war raged openly across the galaxy, the Emperor was secretly building something much more dangerous in the unknown regions. Because even as he plotted to destroy the Republic, he was already building something that would surpass his wildest dreams of power. But the perfect world he created was about to be destroyed by the one thing it couldn't survive: his own family. The Broken Crown. After the Great Galactic War, both empires were still recovering when the Emperor vanished into the unknown regions. While exploring these uncharted worlds, he discovered something incredible: Zakuul and its legendary Eternal Fleet. Thousands of AI-controlled battlecruisers floated in deep space. This technology was far beyond anything in known space, but claiming this power required a completely new approach. Taking the name Valkorion, he began a new life while keeping his original body hidden on Dromund Kaas. As Valkorion, he created the Eternal Empire, a seeming utopia where citizens lived comfortably under their immortal emperor's guidance. This perfect act hid the same monster that had consumed Nathema, though the emperor played his role flawlessly. To complete his vision, Valkorion decided he needed a family. Senya Tyrell had served as a brave knight of Zakuul, someone who dared to speak her mind even to the Emperor himself. He married her, and together they had 3 children: twin sons Arkan and Thexan, and a daughter named Vaylin. Senya had led missions across the galaxy with unmatched skill and honor, earning her place as the finest knight of Zakuul. When she first met Valkorion in the throne room, she was struck by moments of unexpected kindness. She fell in love with those fleeting moments, never realizing they were just another lie. Only years later, watching him send their daughter to be tortured, did she finally see the monster she had married. Their sons, Arkan and Thexan, shared everything: training sessions where they pushed each other to excel, quiet conversations about their father's impossible expectations, and dreams of earning his respect that burned in their hearts every day. For years, the deception worked perfectly, but the Emperor's true nature couldn't remain hidden forever, and cracks began to show in his perfect family when Valkorion showed complete lack of interest toward his sons, despite their desperate attempts to earn approval. However, his treatment of his own daughter Vaylin revealed the monster beneath the mask. Vaylin's powers showed up when she was very young, and she could move objects with just her mind. However, these abilities were so powerful that they terrified everyone who saw them, which made even her own father afraid of what she might become. These abilities were so immense they actually scared the immortal emperor. But instead of helping her grow and flourish, Valkorion saw his daughter as nothing more than a threat to his power. He sent her to a facility on Nathema. There, she endured brutal mental conditioning designed to suppress her powers, torture that would twist her into something far worse than he feared, while breaking Senya's heart when she discovered what was happening to their daughter. When Senya tried to rescue Vaylin, Valkorion stopped her efforts with cold calculation. When later she tried to flee with all 3 children, they rejected their mother and called her weak for opposing their father, breaking the perfect family that Valkorion had created through his complete inability to understand love or real connection. His children grew up damaged by his emotional coldness and cruel treatment, carrying deep anger that would eventually lead to the downfall of their immortal father. Blood and Betrayal. Stories of mysterious attacks on border worlds made Darth Mar decide to hunt down the legendary Sith Emperor. He assembled a team of Republic operatives and launched an expedition into the unknown regions, searching for the source of these brutal raids on both Republic and Imperial territories. But the end of Valkorion's perfect empire began much closer to home. Arkan and Thexan returned from military campaigns with terrible scars from their battles against both Republic and Imperial worlds. Arkan had lost an arm in the fighting, while both brothers carried the weight of countless victories that meant nothing to their father. Despite recognition after years of being ignored, the twin brothers presented trophies from their conquest to Valkorion, hoping that finally, after all their achievements, he would show them the approval they craved more than anything else in the galaxy. But Valkorion's response was the same crushing indifference he had always shown. He treated their achievements as meaningless distractions while showing no emotion whatsoever. After a lifetime of being ignored by the one person whose approval they wanted most, something snapped in Arkan. He attacked his father with his lightsaber in pure rage. When Thexan tried to stop the violence, Arkan accidentally struck down his beloved twin brother instead. The accidental killing of his closest companion completely broke something essential in Arkan's spirit. Yet even witnessing his son's death, Valkorion showed no emotion. Arkan's grief transformed into rage beyond anything he had ever experienced, but outside events were about to give him the perfect chance for revenge. Darth Mar and his team had entered unknown regions, hunting for the source of attacks on both their territories and searching for the legendary Sith Emperor. Arkan's armies caught them completely by surprise, dragging Mar and the expedition's other leader, the Outlander, to Zakuul in chains like common prisoners. Darth Mar and the Outlander were dragged to the throne room where the Emperor waited. As soon as they entered, they could feel his dark presence crushing down on them like a weight. Yet they still called him out because they knew Zakuul was his second empire. Furthermore, they knew he destroyed Ziost, and they also knew he started decades of war between the Republic and Empire. The Emperor stood up and unchained Darth Mar with the Force. Then he demanded that Mar kneel before him, but Mar wasn't about to bow to anyone, so instead he killed 3 Zakuul guards in seconds. However, Valkorion responded with force lightning that tore through Mar's body, which killed him instantly. After that, he captured the Outlander, but then made a final mistake that would cost him everything, because in that throne room, he revealed his true identity as the immortal Sith Emperor. As a result, he gave Arkan exactly what he needed for revenge. Valkorion commanded Arkan to kill the Outlander, so Arkan drew his lightsaber. But instead of following orders, he made a choice that shocked his father. First, he cut the Outlander free, and then told him that this was their only chance to take down the Emperor. After that, Arkan charged his father with his lightsaber, which kept him occupied. While Arkan lay on the floor, the Outlander drove his lightsaber through Valkorion's chest. He thought he'd finally killed the immortal Sith Emperor who had caused so much suffering across the galaxy. But this was exactly what the ancient Emperor had been planning all along. The moment his body died, Valkorion's spirit jumped into the Outlander's mind using methods he'd spent centuries perfecting. But this host was different than anyone he'd controlled before. His body was dead, yet Valkorion lived on inside the Outlander's head. For 5 years, the Outlander stayed frozen in carbonite while Valkorion whispered in their dreams, trying to twist their thoughts. But the Outlander's will was stronger than he expected, fighting back against every attempt at control. When the Outlander finally escaped, Valkorion played the helpful mentor. He offered his power when they needed it most, pretending to guide them toward victory, all while hiding his true goal, complete possession of their body. The irony was bitter. He'd once enslaved 8,000 Sith Lords without breaking a sweat, yet this single person kept slipping through his grasp. This was his final gamble. Either he would claim ultimate victory, or everything would crumble around him. The Last Deception. Valkorion played advisor while the Outlander fought Arkan's tyranny across the galaxy. The Outlander gathered allies from every corner of the known worlds, built a resistance movement that grew stronger with each victory, and eventually redeemed Arkan through his mother Senya's love. In a desperate fight aboard the gravestone, Senya begged her son to stop his anger. Her words reached him, turning him from a cruel ruler into someone who felt sorry for what he had done. Arkan went into hiding, finally free of the rage that had consumed him. But when Valen broke free from her mental conditioning, she became far more dangerous than Arkan had ever been. Years of torture had twisted her abilities into pure rage that threatened to tear apart everything in the galaxy. She had to be stopped before her unstable power destroyed entire worlds. The final confrontation on Odessen ended when the Outlander and his allies defeated her in combat, her uncontrolled power ultimately contributing to her downfall. With Thexan and Valen dead and Arkan vanished into hiding, the Outlander claimed the Eternal Throne. This was exactly what Valkorion had been planning throughout their entire relationship, every battle and every victory leading to this moment. He revealed his true intentions with cold satisfaction, telling the Outlander they had been nothing more than a carefully shaped weapon designed to serve his ultimate purpose. Now, he would take their body and rule once more as the immortal Emperor. Valkorion continued his pitch, his voice echoing in the Outlander's mind. He told them to look around at the endless war between Republic and Empire. He offered peace through strength, where the strong would survive. The weak would be protected, but the Outlander had been preparing for this inevitable betrayal. The ultimate battle took place within the Outlander's mind rather than the physical world. They pulled out the holocron of Lord Dramath, Valkorion's tortured father, and discovered the Emperor's greatest weakness. The Outlander spoke of the same conditioning phrase Valkorion had used to control Valen, and it became his weakness when turned against him. Supported by the spirits of those he had wronged, Senya, Arkan, Valen, and countless others, the Outlander turned all of Valkorion's weapons against him with deadly results. In his final moments, Valkorion raged against the fate claiming him. The son of a farmer who had become a god through mass murder finally died as he had lived, completely alone, consumed by the same darkness he had used for so long. But even this clear victory contained one final hidden danger, yet death would not be the end for the immortal Emperor. Death of a god. When Lord Scourge and Jedi Kira Carson destroyed Tenebray's original preserved body on Dromund Kaas, something terrible was released, a plague of darkness. This was Tenebray's last chance to stay alive after death. The supernatural plague targeted Jedi like Satele Shan, turning her and her followers into mindless servants as it searched for a powerful Force user to possess completely. Satele Shan became the plague's primary target, but the Outlander and their allies recognized the signs of his influence. In the climactic battle known as Echoes of Oblivion, all three aspects of the Emperor's identity appeared at the same time to fight for continued existence. Tenebrae, the cruel child, Vitiate, the immortal Sith Lord, and Valkorion, the false Emperor. Heroes from across galactic history united against them. Revan, Mitra Surik, Darth Mar, and countless others who had suffered under his rule joined forces. Their combined will proved stronger than his accumulated power, as love and sacrifice beat hatred and selfishness in the final confrontation. Finally, the galaxy was free from the son of a farmer who had tried to consume everything that lived. Valkorion's power came from consumption, draining everything around him until nothing remained. But 1,000 years before him, a different kind of Sith Lord rose to dominate the galaxy through something almost opposite: pure, refined skill. Where Valkorion fed on life, Exar Kun mastered combat so completely that even 4 millennia after his death, no one had forgotten his name.
Exar Kun's story is one of the most striking in all of Star Wars Legends, because it shows how a single Jedi's hunger for forbidden strength led to the death of entire civilizations, the near collapse of the Jedi Order, and a shadow that lingered for 4,000 years after his body was destroyed. Most fans know the Sith through Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, but this ancient Dark Lord came long before either of them, and his influence shaped the darkness for generations. Using legend sources including Jedi vs. Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force, The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology, the Jedi Academy Trilogy series, I, Jedi, Darth Plagueis, and Tales of the Jedi Companion, we can trace the full arc of this fallen Jedi, from his early training under a respected master to his creation of the double-bladed lightsaber, the war that burned worlds, the sorcery that kept his ghost alive inside stone temples, and his final defeat at the hands of students who had barely begun their training. Chapter 1: The Ambitious Student. Exar Kun did not begin as a Dark Lord. He began as one of the most promising students of his era, training on the planet Dantooine under the guidance of Master Vodo Siask Bas. In Jedi vs. Sith: The Essential Guide to the Force, the old master was among the most respected teachers in the Order, and his young pupil showed real talent in the ways of the Force. But even during these early years, the ambitious trainee carried something dangerous, a selfish desire for strength and forbidden secrets that went far beyond what any member of the Order was meant to pursue. Yet, the young student believed none of it would touch him. The Tales of the Jedi Companion describes him as gifted, but deeply arrogant, convinced he could study the teachings of the old Sith without being consumed by them. He was certain his willpower was strong enough to take what he wanted from the darkness and walk away unchanged. This belief would become his defining flaw, a blind spot that no amount of talent could correct. Even from the beginning, this arrogance was woven into every decision he made. Driven by his hunger for forbidden knowledge, the ambitious student eventually abandoned his training altogether. The same guide details how his path away from the light began when he discovered the tomb of Freedon Nad, an old Sith follower on the jungle moon of Dexun. That moment marked the true beginning of his fall, and what waited for him on the other side would change the galaxy forever. Chapter 2: The Path to Darkness. Nad's ghost did not simply wait to be found. It reached out to the former Jedi, pulling him deeper into the ways of the Sith. The Guide to the Force picks up the story here. The Shade directs the fallen student to travel to Yavin 4, a jungle moon that once served as the stronghold of the long-dead Sith warlord Nagasato. Surrounded by crumbling temples and overgrown ruins, the young exile explored Sadao's laboratories and fortresses, absorbing knowledge that had been buried for thousands of years. These were not simple Force techniques, they were tools of Sith sorcery and dark science, arts that the Jedi had long forbidden. But the fallen Jedi was never content to be anyone's follower for long. As his abilities grew on the jungle moon, he turned on the very Shade that had guided him there. He grew so strong that he vanquished Nad's ghost, making sure he would have no rivals. This act revealed the core of who he truly was, someone who would use anyone and anything to climb higher, then throw them aside the moment they stopped being useful. With the old ghost gone and the secrets of Sadao's fortress at his command, the former student's transformation was nearly complete. However, the galaxy still had one more piece to put into place before he could claim the title he had been reaching for. Chapter 3: Dark Lord of the Sith. Exar Kun's rise did not happen alone. Across the galaxy, another Jedi had also fallen to the darkness. His name was Ulic Qel-Droma, a former Jedi who had originally gone undercover inside the Krath cult with the goal of destroying it from within. Instead, the darkness consumed him. The Guide to the Force recounts how, when the paths of these two fallen Jedi finally crossed, the result was a fierce duel, each one fighting to prove his control over the other. Then, something unexpected happened. In the middle of the night, the ancient shadow of Mark Aragnos appeared and stopped the duel. This long-dead Sith Master, whose influence still lingered in the Force, declared the fallen student the new Dark Lord and named Qel-Droma his apprentice. With that single act, a new Sith Order was born, carrying the full weight of the old Sith legacy behind it. The Tales of the Jedi Companion shows the newly crowned Dark Lord wasting no time building his base, establishing a vast brotherhood of the Sith that once rivaled the Jedi in both numbers and strength. Champions of the Force confirms that this brotherhood was a rebuilding of an older Sith Order, reconstructed under new leadership to challenge the Jedi directly. His methods of recruitment were brutal and effective. The Guide to the Force reveals that the new Dark Lord used his abilities to turn Jedi students to the darkness, then commanded them to assassinate their own masters. Among those he corrupted was Qel-Droma, who became his first apprentice, along with another Jedi named Larad Noon. In a matter of months, the former student of Boss had built himself an army, and the Order was bleeding from within. Chapter 4: The Weapon That Changed Everything. What made Exar Kun truly dangerous in combat was not just his connection to the Force, it was the weapon he created. The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology credits the Dark Lord with the creation of the double-bladed lightsaber, a weapon that would become forever linked to his name. He built it by modifying his standard lightsaber, adding a second blade projector to the opposite end of the handle, allowing him to ignite two blue-white blades at the same time. Jedi vs. Sith: The Essential Guide to the Force goes further, describing this weapon as having been built from instructions found in an old Sith holocron, designed specifically for more effective killing. This was not a weapon of defense, it was built from the ground up as a tool of destruction. But the double-bladed design was only part of what made it so deadly. The weapons guide describes a set of custom controls that allowed him to change his blades in ways no opponent could predict. He could adjust each blade's length from half a meter to 1.5 meters in the middle of a fight. Even more tricky, he could switch a blade's intensity from its highest setting, strong enough to cut through the toughest metals, all the way down to a harmless shaft of light that offered no resistance at all. His fighting style matched the weapon perfectly. He wielded his saber like a long fighting staff, using one blade to block, while spinning the handle to deliver a killing blow with the second. One of his signature tactics involved suddenly shortening a blade or dropping its intensity during a clash, so that an opponent's lightsaber would pass through its now harmless blade, carrying them forward and off balance. In that split second, the Dark Lord would strike with the other end, turning his enemy's own attack into an opening that killed them. On top of these physical tactics, the Sith duelist paired his swordplay with the ability to sense his opponent's moves before they made them. The same guide puts it plainly: the combination of an unpredictable weapon, misleading tactics, and the ability to read an enemy's next strike made him a virtually unstoppable fighter. Thousands of years later, this weapon's legacy still echoed through the Sith. In Darth Plagueis, when Darth Maul built his own double-bladed lightsaber, his master immediately recognized it as the weapon of the old Dark Lord. The double-bladed saber demanded extreme skill just to avoid injuring oneself, and only the most gifted fighters dared to wield one. The fact that Plagueis could identify it on sight showed just how deeply the old duelist's reputation had been burned into Sith memory. Chapter 5: The Duel That Shook the Republic. With his brotherhood growing and his weapon perfected, Exar Kun turned his attention to unfinished business. The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology places one of his most important duels on the floor of the Republic's Senate itself. There, in front of horrified senators and Jedi, the Dark Lord challenged and struck down his former master, Voto Siask Bass. Jedi confirms that the fallen Jedi traveled to Coruscant and murdered his former teacher in the Senate chamber. The same master who had once trained him, who had tried to turn him back to the light, was cut down by the very student he had failed to save. The Guide to the Force fills in the rest. The Sith duelist used his superior skills and modified weapon to overpower the old Jedi Master completely. And for all his wisdom and experience, Boss simply could not match the combination of the double-bladed saber and his former student's ruthless fighting style. Champions of the Force notes that after the old master tried one final time to turn his former student back to the light, the fallen Jedi killed him, and the fallen teacher became a martyr for the Jedi cause. This murder was not just personal, it was a message to every Jedi in the galaxy that the old ways cannot protect them. Meanwhile, Darth Plagueis records that the Sith Master was also capable of using the Force to freeze large crowds in place, and he performed this very feat against members of the Republic Senate. Between his dueling skill and his raw ability, there was no single opponent in the galaxy who could stand against him. Chapter 6: The Great Sith War. With the Brotherhood of the Sith at his back and Keldroma as his apprentice, the Dark Lord launched the Great Sith War, a conflict that would scar the galaxy for generations. The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology lays out the scale of the conflict. He led an army of followers in a campaign to wipe out the Jedi Knights and conquer the Republic. This was not a small rebellion or a border conflict. It was an organized attempt to destroy the Order and replace it with Sith rule. The level of destruction was staggering. The Guide to the Force recounts how he used weaponry from Naga Sadow's old flagship to destroy the 10 suns of the Crone Cluster, triggering a shockwave that tore across space and devastated the planet Osis, wiping out the Great Jedi Library. In a single act, he erased thousands of years of Jedi history and learning. The Tales of the Jedi Companion confirms this account, noting that the 10 stars in the Crone Drift were triggered to explode, and that the burning of Osis was among the worst losses the Order had ever suffered. Beyond raw destruction, he was also a master of dark science. The same guide reveals that he created monsters known as Terentatex, beasts born from Sith rituals and specifically designed to hunt and kill Jedi, along with the Dark Reaper, a super weapon fueled by the Force Harvester, which could drain the life energy of thousands of living beings at once. Darth Plagueis further describes his talent for sorcery, noting that the old Sith Master used these dark acts to create illusions, shape monstrous creatures, and even bring the dead back to life. The same source states that he could fill the entire atmosphere of a planet with dark energy, and that legends even claimed he was strong enough to make stars explode. Centuries later, Plagueis reflected on whether these old Sith were truly mightier than modern ones, or whether they simply benefited from an era when the darkness was stronger in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Yavin 4, he built his personal stronghold by taking command of the native Massassi warriors and transforming their temples into centers of Sith influence. Champions of the Force paints a grim picture. He enslaved the entire native population and forced them to build a network of massive temples, including the Great Massassi Temple and the Obsidian Pyramid. Jedi adds that his primary base was the Obsidian Pyramid, located on a small island in a lake, which housed a massive statue that served as a center for his remaining spirit. But perhaps the cruelest act on the Jungle Moon comes from the Guide to the Force. The Sith Master created a device called the Golden Globe, designed specifically to trap and feed on the souls of Massassi children. He did not just enslave these people, he consumed them down to their youngest. Chapter 7: Death and Survival. The Great Sith War did not end in victory for Exar Kun. His own apprentice, Keldroma, eventually turned on him and led the Republic directly to the Sith stronghold on Yavin 4. The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology tells us the resulting battle devastated the Jungle Moon and destroyed the Sith Master's twin-bladed lightsaber in the process. The weapon that had made him unstoppable was gone. A massive Jedi strike force made up of hundreds of United Masters then combined their strength to bring him down. In Dark Apprentice, this united front focused their combined energy against him. While Champions of the Force adds that the Jedi devastated the entire surface of Yavin 4, scorching the jungles to stop him once and for all. The companion source completes the picture. The combined Jedi strength laid waste to the moon's jungles, leaving the once green world a burned wasteland. But the Dark Lord refused to die. In a final, desperate act of Sith sorcery, he sacrificed everything he had left. The same source reveals that he drained the life force of every remaining Massassi slave to anchor his ghost within the temples, while his physical body was destroyed in the fire. The Guide to the Force backs this up, stating that he used Sith sorcery to destroy his own body and preserve his shade within the stone structures. Dark Apprentice puts it plainly: the Sith Master drained every remaining native to seal his ghost within the temples, waiting thousands of years until other Jedi arrived to awaken him. The enslaved race, tormented and exploited for years, became his final fuel. Every man, woman, and child was consumed so that his ghost could endure, and so the Dark Lord of the Sith entered a sleep that would last 4,000 years. His body gone, his lightsaber destroyed, his brotherhood scattered, but his shadow trapped inside the stone temples of the Jungle Moon, waiting in silence for a new generation of Jedi to arrive. Chapter 8: The Dark Man. 4,000 years passed. The temples of Yavin 4 were swallowed by the jungle, and the native people were forgotten. Then, the Tales of the Jedi Companion tells us the ghost of the old Sith Master was first stirred when Luke Skywalker arrived at the secret rebel base on the Jungle Moon. 11 years later, when the Jedi Master founded his academy inside the Great Massassi Temple, the ancient presence became fully active and began whispering to students, seeking to corrupt them one by one. In Jedi Search, Skywalker chose the Great Temple as the site for his academy, a massive stone pyramid originally built by the vanished native race. He sensed that the alien structures were filled with secrets and knowledge of their own, and he felt a distinct energy and mystery surrounding the ruins. The location was isolated, overgrown by thick jungles, and far from the rest of the galaxy, making it ideal for training, but also the perfect hunting ground for a dark presence that fed on isolation and weakness. The same source reveals the danger building beneath the surface. During the Jedi Master's address to the New Republic Senate, senators like Garm Bel Iblis pointed out the terrible damage caused by Jedi who had fallen to the darkness, naming Darth Vader and Jerus Sabaoth as examples. Even the Jedi Master himself worried about whether he could bring a student back from the shadows if one of them fell, knowing that contact with the darkness could twist the minds and abilities of those sensitive to the Force. Yet the greatest danger was already inside the temple walls. The Dark Presence's first victim was a student named Gantoris, a Jedi candidate from the planet Il-Sha. Jedi Search introduces the young man as someone haunted by recurring nightmares of a shadowy figure who offered him incredible secrets but ultimately destroyed him. When the Jedi Master first arrived to recruit him, the student mistook Skywalker for this dark figure from his dreams. Dark Apprentice reveals that the old shade haunted the young man's nightmares, disguised as this dark figure, secretly giving him instructions on how to build a complex lightsaber with multiple crystals that allowed for shifting blade lengths. When the student finally tried to resist the Shade's influence, the Dark Presence used his own anger, specifically his rage, over the destruction of his colony on Dantooine, to burn him alive from the inside out. With his first victim dead, the Wraith turned to a far more powerful target, Kip Duran, the Academy's most gifted student. The same source shows the old presence mentoring the young man personally, claiming his abilities surpass even the Jedi Masters. He taught the young student ancient rites and history, appearing to him in the Obsidian Temple deep in the jungle, telling him that modern Jedi were weak because they blocked out the limitless abilities and secret rites of the Sith. The corruption worked. With the Wraith's help, the young student pulled the Suncrusher superweapon from the core of the gas giant Yavin, and the companion source backs this up, showing the Dark Presence using the Academy's most gifted student to draw this terrible weapon from the depths of the gas giant. Under the Shade's influence, the corrupted student went on to commit acts of destruction on a stellar scale, using the Suncrusher to devastate entire star systems. But the Shade did not stop with students. He went after the Jedi Master himself, first appearing in a dream disguised as Anakin Skywalker, urging Luke to use the Force as a tool for conquest. When that failed, the Presence physically appeared and destroyed the Jedi holocron, shattering the image of his former master boss that lived within it. This act erased much of the Order's history, knowledge that could never be recovered. Then came the killing blow. In a coordinated attack alongside his corrupted student, the Dark Presence struck the Jedi Master directly. Dark Apprentice describes how the Wraith lashed out with waves of darkness and frozen poison, while serpent-shaped tendrils of black force energy sank their fangs into Luke and dragged his spirit into a bottomless pit of cold emptiness. The Jedi Master's body was left in a death-like state, hovering between life and death, while his spirit was pulled into darkness. iJedi makes clear that the Wraith's ability to hide his presence was so complete that even a Jedi Master could not sense him while he was influencing his students just meters away. He preyed on the fears, ambitions, and doubts of the apprentices, using vivid illusions and images of loved ones to break their will, including using Corran Horn's wife and father against him. Despite having no physical body, the old presence could still affect the physical world, melting electronics and throwing opponents across rooms with enough force to break bones and cause serious internal damage. The same source describes his control over physical creatures, directing mindless two-headed winged monsters with crystal stingers through dark threads of influence. These were creatures born from Sith dark science, two-headed flying reptiles with metallic claws, and scorpion stingers dripping with black acid poison. Even after 4,000 years, the remains of his creations still serve the old Wraith's will. Meanwhile, the Shade also tried to turn the student Serene against the Academy. The companion source records that the Dark Presence entered the older student's mind while he slept, nearly tricking him into destroying the Jedi Master's unconscious body. The Wraith's plan was becoming clear. He intended to use the trainees as the core of a new, unbeatable force-wielding army to resurrect his Brotherhood of the Sith. Through it all, the old presence held extreme disrespect for the modern Jedi, calling them puny and referring to them as bugs, while viewing his own strength as reaching the level of a god. His corrupted student, still under the Shade's influence, argued to others at the Academy that the old Sith Master had discovered a way for the Jedi to expand their abilities, and that the old Masters had only opposed him out of fear. The corruption ran deep, and the Academy was breaking apart. Yet, for all his strength, the old Sith Master carried a weakness he never understood. Corran Horn makes a telling argument in iJedi. The Wraith's reliance on destruction actually weakened him over time, because life creates the Force. Every act of ruin, every soul consumed, left him with less to feed on, his energy worn thin by 4,000 years of draining and destroying. The end came when the Jedi Master's students finally stood together. Champions of the Force tells how 12 trainees, including Streen, Karana T, and Silgal, surrounded the Shade and formed a ring of light through shared focus. The companion source provides a fuller list of those present: Streen, Karana T, Silgal, Tion, Cam Solazar, Dorsk 81, and Brachus, aided by the ghost of his former master boss and the apparition of Luke Skywalker himself. The master he had murdered 4,000 years ago had returned to witness his end. In a moment that ended 4,000 years of darkness, Karana T, wielding Gantorus' lightsaber, and Streen, wielding Luke's, crossed their blades through the center of the Shade's shadowy body, creating an explosion of pure white light as bright as an exploding star. Streen then used his mastery of the wind to create a force whirlwind that trapped the shredded remains of the Sith spirit and flung them out through the temple roof into the vast emptiness beyond. The old Sith vanish with a final, cut-short scream. iJedi records one final act of cleansing that followed. Orin flew his X-Wing to the Obsidian Temple that had served as the Sith Master's primary base, and used proton torpedoes and lasers to destroy the massive statue and the temple entirely, heating the stones until they ran like water and erasing the Sith writings and dark energy center that the old Lord had left behind. With the statue gone and the temple melted to nothing, the last physical trace of the Wraith's presence on the Jungle Moon was wiped clean. Even after the shade was gone, one student still had to face the Sith Master's lasting influence. The same source recounts how the corrupted student returned to the Obsidian Temple for a final internal test. Confronting a dark image he believed was the ghost of the old Sith Master. Instead of striking in anger, he chose peace, and discovered that the shadow was actually a vision of his dead brother Zeth. The young man who had been the Wraith's greatest weapon finally broke free, not through strength, but through choosing to let go. 4,000 years of darkness ended by a circle of students who chose the light. But the story of Exar Kun was only one chapter in the long war between Jedi and Sith, shaped by the Dark Masters who came before him, from Naga Sadow to Mark Aragnos to Freedon Nad, all part of a legacy stretching back to the very dawn of the Sith Order.
Exar Kun was a wound in history, a ghost clinging to stone temples, waiting centuries for someone to corrupt. But what came after him was something the galaxy had never encountered before. Not a fallen Jedi preserving his spirit through sorcery, but a man who stopped being a man entirely. A void given form, sustained by nothing but hunger, leaving silence wherever he passed. Our story begins on Darth Nihilus' darkest day that would turn him into the planet-eating Sith we know him as, because it was the events on Malachor V where Nihilus was created. We don't know much about Nihilus before Malachor V, but we do know he was a human male who served in the Mandalorian Wars, fighting alongside Revan's forces against the Neo-Crusaders. For years, he fought in the war, losing everything in the fighting, his family, his friends, even his will to live. But at Malachor V, as he stood on the planet's surface during the final battle, everything went terribly wrong. The moment had finally come to end the war, and when General Mitra Surik gave the order to activate Revan's secret weapon, he felt something terrible wake up in the Force. A wave of fear washed over him as the mass shadow generator created a huge gravity trap that crushed Malachor V's orbiting fleets in an instant. The ground shook hard beneath him as the planet itself began to crack, and his fellow soldiers died instantly, crushed by the debris or eaten by the dark energies set free. But something different happened to him, something that would change the entire galaxy. Nihilus survived when others died, becoming a wound in the Force, a void of emptiness. Acting without thinking, he drained the life force of a dying soldier nearby to keep himself from falling apart. This act briefly stopped his pain but left him forever wanting more. From that moment, Nihilus's ties to normal feelings were cut. He only felt an endless hunger, not sadness or guilt for the lives he took. He found out that he could survive only by eating the Force energy of other living beings, and with each life he ate, his hunger grew back even stronger. Nihilus's body, already kept alive only by the dark side, began to waste away. Over time, he would lose his physical form completely. Each feeding gave him a short break, but left him even weaker if he went without food, creating a terrible cycle of endless starvation. After the battle, he stayed trapped in the wreckage on Malachor V's destroyed surface, basically stuck among the ruins. Soon, he needed more life force each day just to keep his dying body together, and even while actively draining whatever life was nearby, the emptiness inside kept growing larger. Over time, the dark side's poison ate away at his body until nothing of his original form was left. This faceless ghost would later be named Darth Nihilus by Darth Krayt, but at that time, he was simply a being of hunger and dark force energy. After the Jedi Civil War, the fallen Jedi Krayt, now Darth Traya, found this wound in the Force on Malachor V and saw potential in it. She took Nihilus to the Trayus Academy and became his Sith Master, teaching him to focus and use his hunger as a weapon on purpose rather than let it eat him up without control. Under Traya's training, Nihilus's feeding ability became far more controlled and powerful. He learned to feel the life force of faraway Force-sensitive beings and even drain whole populations across space through the Force. This made him a perfect Jedi hunter in the years to come. Under Treya's teaching, Nihilus accepted his role as what she would call the Lord of Hunger. He got better at his ability to feed on the Force, learning to control the process so he could adjust his feeding as needed. Even better, he learned to feel distant Force presences and drain life across the huge distances of space. This ability would make him the perfect hunter of Jedi. Kreia gave him the Sith name Darth Nihilus, a name meaning nothingness to match the emptiness he represented. From then on, he was known as Lord of Hunger, no longer a man, but a living void driven only by the need to feed. In fact, Kreia later said that Nihilus's presence alone could kill. His mere presence kills those around him. Spending too much time near the Lord of Hunger turned his Sith followers into dried-up slaves barely holding on to life, showing how even standing in Nihilus's shadow was dangerous. As Nihilus lost what made him human, he stopped speaking in any normal human language. Instead, when he made sounds, an inhuman hollow voice came out, one that literally carried his hunger with it. Hearing this terrible voice was painful. In fact, Nihilus's very speech could cause pain or death to anyone who heard it. Eventually, Nihilus's real body rotted away completely, and to avoid losing his existence to the void, he tied his life force to his mask, armor, and robes through Sith magic. These items became containers for his spirit. Without them, his essence would disappear into nothing. Therefore, the armor and mask were not just clothes. They were Nihilus. Nihilus soon joined with Treya and another of her students, Darth Sion, the so-called Lord of Pain who could not die, to form a secret Sith triumvirate. Their shared goal was to wipe out the Jedi Order, though each Dark Lord was broken in a different way. Treya, having been thrown out and feeling betrayed by the Force, wanted the complete end of the Force itself. Sion's undead existence was kept going by pain and hatred, and Nihilus was a bottomless pit of hunger that would eat all life if nobody stopped him. By combining their strengths, they planned to finish what Darth Revan and Malak had started, to wipe out the last Jedi in the galaxy. In practice, the Triumvirate's methods worked well together. Sion's Sith assassins hunted and murdered lone Jedi in hiding, while Nihilus worked as a living doomsday weapon. If the Jedi tried to gather or rebuild, he would feel that concentration of life in the Force and eat the entire gathering at once. This meant any world hosting a Jedi meeting became Nihilus's target for destruction. The surviving Jedi learned that even being in the same place was dangerous, forcing them to stay scattered and hidden. Alone, they were far easier targets for Sion's agents. But the alliance didn't last. In 3955 BBY, Nihilus and Sion got tired of Treya's leadership. They attacked their master in the Treyas core. Nihilus slammed her against the platform with the Force, and Sion beat her until she couldn't fight back anymore. Together, the two Sith drained Treya's connection to the Force, cutting off her abilities. Darth Treya was defeated and thrown out, left for dead by her backstabbing students. Thrown out and weakened, Kreia came to sadly realize what Nihilus truly was, a monster born of Malachor that, without guidance, could eat everything without caring. No longer controlled by her influence, Nihilus was not a precise weapon, but a wild force of nature beyond control. In exile, Kreia began to plan a way to destroy the creature she had helped create. She expected that the Jedi exile, Mitras Surik, who had accidentally played a part in Nihilus's creation at Malachor 5, would one day return from the Outer Rim. Kreia quietly set up Surik as the answer to Nihilus, believing this wound in the Force could face the Lord of Hunger when the time came. Without Treya's influence, Nihilus existed only to feed. He had no big plan or final goal beyond the next meal. With each feeding, his power grew. But so too did his hunger, doubling after each feeding. He was already dead in every way that mattered. The only question was how many he would kill before he finally fell apart. The consumption of Katar. In 3952 BBY, Jedi Master Atris came up with a plan, one that sadly became the Jedi Order's biggest disaster. She secretly called the surviving Jedi Masters to a meeting on the Miraluka colony world of Katar, planning to use their gathering as bait to draw out the hidden Sith threat. Atris herself stayed behind on Telos 4, hiding her absence but quietly spreading word of this Jedi meeting in hopes the Sith would take the bait. She promised the others that if the Sith showed themselves, they could be faced and destroyed. Unfortunately, Atris badly underestimated the power hiding in the shadows. She believed the secret meeting on the Miraluka colony would lure the Sith into a trap she could spring. She promised the remaining Jedi Masters that when the Sith came, they would be ready to strike back. But what she didn't understand was how powerful Nihilus had become. Her trap would work, though not in the way she planned. Drawn by this bright light in the Force, Nihilus felt the Qatar gathering like a burning beacon calling out to his hunger. He immediately set course for Qatar aboard his scary flagship, the Ravager. The Ravager was a wrecked Republic capital ship from Malachor V, a vessel that should have been destroyed. Its hull was cracked and open to space in places. Basically a dead ship kept alive only by Nihilus's power. With this ghost ship and his fleet of Sith leftovers, Nihilus arrived at Qatar to feed. The Dark Lord stood on his bridge and let loose his power upon the planet. He sent out a huge wave of Force energy downwards, an invisible storm that touched every living thing below. When Nihilus was close enough, he spoke a terrible spell, his very voice filled with hunger, and that sound echoed across Qatar, destroying life as it spread. In an instant, Jedi Master Vandar Tokari and the entire group of Jedi at the meeting fell as their life energy was ripped away. Decades of training made no difference. In just seconds, every living thing on the planet was completely eaten. The Miraluka colonists, being naturally Force-sensitive, saw their coming doom through the Force. The entire civilization died in moments, their foresight giving them a brief, terrible awareness of the nothing that swallowed them. Cities full of life seconds earlier had fallen quiet, turned into mass graveyards under a now empty sky. The surface of Qatar was cleaned of all life, turned into lifeless rock and dust. Back on Telos, Atris, who had purposely stayed away from the meeting, felt the shock of those countless deaths through the Force. Only afterward did she fully understand how huge her mistake was. Yes, her trap had drawn out the hidden Sith, but at a terrible price. The gathered Jedi were destroyed, and an entire Miraluka colony was destroyed. Atris had tried to save the Jedi Order by finding its enemies. Instead, her actions almost finished the Jedi Order. Among the destruction, one person survived, a Miraluka woman named Visas Mar. Nihilus found the badly hurt Visas on the surface, and instead of killing her, he knocked her out and brought her aboard his ship. When Visas woke up days later, fully healed on the Ravager, Nihilus silently invaded her mind and showed her a vision of the galaxy through his eyes. In this vision, Visas saw a galaxy where all beings were stripped of the Force, disconnected from one another, and lost in chaos. Nihilus saw himself bringing order to this chaos by eating all life. This terrible sight destroyed her Force vision, literally burning her blind eyes and cutting off her view of anything except Nihilus. In that moment, Visas gave in completely to the being who had killed everyone on her world. Broken by the loss and the dark vision, she became Nihilus's obedient servant, his shadow hand, completely under his control and without hope. Qatar's destruction basically erased the Miraluka presence there, an entire Force-sensitive culture. After this terrible act, Visas Mar became Darth Nihilus's shadow hand, tied to him by a powerful Force bond. Through this bond, created in the vision that broke her, she could feel her master's hunger and pain, and she served him completely, even helping and looking for new feeding grounds when he asked. It was only much later, after the Jedi exile Mitra Surik spared Visas' life and showed her kindness, that Visas woke up to regret. Under Surik's guidance, she turned against Nihilus and began to hate what she had done in his name. But that lay in the future. The Lord of Hunger Ascendant. Having eaten Qatar, Nihilus had gone beyond any normal Sith goal. Politics or revenge didn't interest him. He existed only to satisfy his endless hunger. Even other Siths stayed away from him, knowing that Nihilus would just as easily eat allies as enemies. In the following years, the Lord of Hunger wandered the Outer Rim aboard the Ravager. Followed by a fleet of wrecked warships, he kept going through the dark side. He searched for worlds rich in the Force to eat, and whispers spread of a terrifying Sith Lord who could eat entire planets. The truth of Nihilus's rampage was even more horrible than the rumors. With each feeding, his power and hunger only grew, leaving whole systems lifeless behind him. During this time, Nihilus wandered the Outer Rim with his fleet, searching for worlds strong in force energy to feed his hunger. Stories of his destruction spread through the galaxy like wildfire, and whispers of a Sith Lord who could eat entire worlds became the stuff of nightmares. But the reality was far worse than any story could describe. Aboard the Ravager, Nihilus's presence had destroyed his own crew. The warship, still cracked and half-ruined from Malachor V, worked only through Nihilus's dark will and a skeleton crew of followers enslaved by his power. Whole sections of the ship were open to space, useless except to corpses and mindless shells. Those sent to serve Nihilus quickly lost their minds and strength, turned into slaves that walked through the ship doing simple tasks, barely alive. The hallways of the Ravager were filled with the proof of Nihilus's hungry nature, each crew member showing the slow death that waited for anyone who stayed near the Dark Lord too long. During this time, Visas Marr acted as Nihilus's agent and messenger. As the one person connected to his mind, she managed tasks aboard the Ravager and helped carry out his will, even looking for important Force echoes or targets for him to feed upon. Tied to Nihilus by the Force, Visas could feel the beating of his hunger within her own mind. She felt that every moment for him was torture, his existence a pain of endless need that only eating life could briefly calm. By now, nothing of the person he once was seemed to remain. Nihilus worked by pure instinct, driven by need rather than thinking. When she looked at her master through the Force, she saw only an all-eating void. Around 3951 BBY, Nihilus's influence spread into the Onderon Civil War. His Sith forces secretly backed General Vaklu's rebels in their attempt to overthrow Queen Talia. Nihilus's agent, Colonel Tobin, Vaklu's second-in-command, acted as the go-between for this partnership. Their goal was to cut Onderon's ties to the Republic, which included getting rid of Queen Talia's Jedi advisor, Master Kavar, one of the last Jedi Masters. Nihilus's followers even set up a camp in the Forbidden Tomb of Frieden Nad on Dixun. There, the Sith performed dark rituals, trying to strengthen Vaklu's rebellion by drawing on the tomb's dark side power and therefore tip Onderon's fate in Nihilus's favor. In early 3951 BBY, Nihilus felt something wrong in the Force, an echo strangely familiar to his own, yet not the same. Unable to understand it, he sent Visas Marr to investigate and get rid of its source. That source was Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, who had just returned from exile and unknowingly gave off a wound in the Force like Nihilus. Visas found Surik's ship and attacked, trying to capture or kill her as ordered, but Surik defeated Visas in the following fight. Yet instead of killing the Miraluka, Mitra Surik chose mercy, sparing Visas' life and even treating her injuries. This unexpected kindness shook Visas deeply. Nihilus's slave found herself shown kindness for the first time since Qatar, creating the hope that she could escape the darkness she was tied to. Visas' betrayal had begun, and that spark of freedom would prove important in the trials to come. After Vaklu's defeat, Colonel Tobin, hurt and desperate, ran to Darth Nihilus. Taking Krea's trick, Tobin told Nihilus that a secret academy of Jedi was gathered on Telos IV, unknowingly delivering the bait Krea had planned. This false rumor of many Jedi on Telos instantly caught Nihilus's attention. The bait was set, and Nihilus moved to feed. By this stage, Darth Sion himself stayed away from Nihilus. He knew too well that Nihilus's careless hunger could just as easily eat a Sith ally as any Jedi. In truth, the Sith triumvirate had broken apart in all but name. Sion continued his campaign of terror with elite assassins, picking off Jedi survivors one by one, while Nihilus searched the stars for entire worlds to eat. The two Sith Lords rarely talked now, each following their own path. What remained of the triumvirate was simply two dark beings with different methods of reaching the same dark goal. Without Treya's influence, Nihilus existed only to feed. He had no big plan or final goal beyond the next meal. With each feeding, his power grew, but so too did his hunger, becoming harder to satisfy after every feeding. By 3951 BBY, only a handful of Jedi were even left alive. Masters like Zez Kaiel, Vrook Lamar, Kavar, and Atris, who had not gone to Qatar, were among the few survivors, and they stayed in hiding. Basically, the galaxy had no real defense against the Lord of Hunger. No Jedi could gather to challenge him without becoming his next meal. The Trap at Telos. Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, had returned to known space by 3951 BBY. Without knowing it, she was special in a strange way. Like Nihilus, Mitra was a wound in the Force, formed at Malachor 5. Yet her condition was the complete opposite of Nihilus's. Where Nihilus's wound made him always drain life, Mitra's wound showed up as nothing, an empty spot in the Force. She survived Malachor 5 by cutting her connection to the Force, making herself empty to its touch. This meant that where Nihilus always ate life to survive, Mitra Surik was an empty space that could not be eaten or filled. In simple terms, the exile's very nature made her the perfect weapon against the Lord of Hunger. This Telos trap was the final piece of Krea's long game. By using Colonel Tobin's false report, Krea tricked Nihilus with the promise of a hidden Jedi Academy on Telos 4. However, the truth was different. Telos had no Jedi gathering at all. Only Atris lived there, and she had fallen from the Jedi path and collected Sith artifacts. Still, Nihilus believed the lie completely. Thinking a great feast of Jedi awaited him, he flew towards Telos with the Ravager, expecting a rich meal of Force energy that didn't really exist. Mitra Surik knew Nihilus would attack, so she set up her own trap at Telos. She got both the Republic Navy and the Mandalorians to work together for defense. Admiral Cartho Nassi brought the Republic fleet, and Mandalore the Preserver, leader of the Mandalorians, brought his warriors to help. They all knew that normal fighting alone would not stop Nihilus. After all, how do you fight someone who can eat whole planets? As a result, while their fleets fought Nihilus's escort ships in space, Surik and her allies got ready for the real plan. They would sneak onto Nihilus's own ship. The plan was to get on the Ravager and blow it up from the inside, and fight Nihilus face to face, while the space battle kept his forces busy outside. When Nihilus's Ravager reached Telos, a huge space battle started above the planet. Republic warships shot at Nihilus's Sith vessels, and Mandalorian fighters attacked the Ravager's guns directly. Space was filled with laser fire and explosions, but this battle was really just to distract Nihilus. Using this cover, Mitra Surik led a small team that sneaked onto the Ravager. This strike team had 3 people: Surik herself, Mandalore, who was really Canderous Ordo, and Visas Mar, who had now turned against her old master to help Surik. These 3 people carried the galaxy's only hope of beating Nihilus. They had 2 jobs on the Ravager: plant bombs to blow up the ship and fight Nihilus on the bridge. Walking through the broken hallways, Surik's team fought groups of Nihilus's slave soldiers. The ship itself seemed to cry out from Nihilus's dark power, its hallways dark and frightening. They fought brain-dead Sith soldiers at every corner. These walking corpses were Nihilus's newest victims, still doing his commands but with no minds left of their own. The strike team kept moving toward where the Dark Lord waited. Visas knew the Ravager's hallways well, so she led her friends through the ship's twisted paths. As they moved forward, she could feel Nihilus learning about the intruders on his ship. The dark side pushed down on them like a heavy weight. The whole ship was full of Nihilus's evil power. Then, Visas felt something she didn't expect. Through the force bond connecting her to Nihilus, she felt him getting confused. Nihilus's hunger had found the boarding team, but he could not see Mitra Surik properly. To Nihilus's force powers, the exile was something wrong, an empty space in the force, something he couldn't see or eat. This blind spot in what Nihilus could see would lead to his defeat. The death of emptiness. On the bridge, they found Darth Nihilus waiting for them. Just being near him was terrible. The air got cold and the shadows got darker, like all the darkness came together around him. Even the tough Mandalore felt scared when he saw him. This was not a man anymore, but a living, empty space that had taken a shape. Nihilus welcomed them with a terrible blast of his voice, a sound that hurt their minds with hunger and death. Yet then, something strange happened. Nihilus himself stopped moving. Through the Force, Visas could feel that he was confused. He could not understand what Mitra Surik was. His strongest power, the ability to drain life from his enemies, found nothing to grab when he tried it on the exile. For the first time since Malachor 5, Darth Nihilus didn't know what to do. The person he wanted to eat was impossible to touch, an empty space he couldn't reach. And so, the Lord of Hunger stopped to think. The shock of his failure made the Sith Lord freeze, unable to believe that for once, his hunger couldn't touch what he wanted to eat. Since his main power didn't work, Nihilus had to try other attacks. He threw force energy at her, sent waves of darkness, tried everything to beat the exile. However, Mitra Surik stayed strong, fighting Nihilus with her lightsaber instead. Unlike all of Nihilus's other victims, Surik couldn't be beaten by his one special power. This fight had to be won with regular fighting, and when they fought with lightsabers, Nihilus's problems became clear. He wasn't used to fighting someone he couldn't drain strength from, so the Exile's careful lightsaber attacks began to push him back. Every hit she landed made Nihilus weaker because he couldn't steal life energy to make himself stronger again. The Dark Lord had used his draining power for so long that, without it, he was losing to the skilled and brave Jedi Exile. At one key moment, Nihilus threw Mitra Surik backwards with the Force, almost winning the fight. When Visas saw her friend in danger, she bravely jumped between them. She offered her own life to Nihilus in exchange for sparing Mitra Surik. At the same time, Mandalore ran forward, shooting his blaster and hitting the confused Sith Lord. While Nihilus was still stunned from the broken bond and hurt from Mandalore's attack, he couldn't defend himself. The Exile got back up quickly, and together, Mitra Surik, Visas, and Mandalore attacked all at once, finally bringing Darth Nihilus down while he was weak. Darth Nihilus could barely stand now, yet he tried one more time to use his power. Unfortunately, there was nothing left for him to use. All his energy was gone, and there was no life around for him to eat. Right then, Mitra Surik moved forward and struck the final blow. Her lightsaber hit perfectly, cutting down the Lord of Hunger. Nihilus fell to the floor, unable to keep his body together anymore. After the battle ended, Visas walked over to where Nihilus had fallen. Maybe feeling sorry for him, or maybe just curious, she carefully took off his famous mask, wanting to see the face of the man he used to be. There was nothing there. Whatever was left of him disappeared completely. His robes dropped to the floor as his body turned to nothing. Darth Nihilus said no final words. There was nothing left to say, and nothing left of him to say it. But Nihilus's death didn't end the purge he had helped set in motion. If anything, the destruction of Qatar had already done the damage. Nearly 100 Jedi Masters gone in a single moment. An entire order left without leadership, without coordination, and without hope. What followed was the first Jedi Purge, and it would come close to finishing what the Lord of Hunger had started. The Jedi Order was nearly destroyed 3 separate times across galactic history. Each purge succeeded by exploiting different weaknesses. The first purge attacked their philosophy, the second attacked their trust in the Republic, and the third attacked their will to survive. Using both Canon and Legends sources, the first extinction occurred in Legends continuity around 3954 BBY during Knights of the Old Republic II. By the time the systematic hunting began, the damage was already done. The Order had been effectively eliminated before the Sith Triumvirate even started their coordinated pursuit. The weakness came from the Mandalorian Wars. However, these wars were not what they appeared to be. Krayt identified them as massacres that masked a war of conversion, with Revan step-by-step corrupting the Jedi who followed him. According to writer Chris Avallone, Revan possessed an incredibly powerful mind that could see events beyond the immediate moment, understanding how to turn corruption itself into a weapon against Jedi psychology. Central to Revan's approach was his knowledge of darkside corruption. He knew certain places in the galaxy had strong darkside power that corrupted all who walked there, and crucially, he knew how to create them. These locations could break the will of the Jedi by promising power and turning them to darkness, transforming war into a systematic weapon against Jedi stability. Malachor V became the ultimate expression of this strategy. The final battle created something never seen before. When the mass shadow generator activated, thousands were crushed by gravity and destroyed. To hear the Force over such pain was impossible. One Jedi survived by severing her connection to the Force entirely at the moment of disaster. She carried all of those who fell within her, leaving a wound in the Force. Most critically, this wound represented something entirely new. She was forming bonds and leeching the life of others, which became the teaching of the new Sith, to feed on other Force sensitives. The Exile's survival method became the template for an entirely new form of Sith power. The Jedi Masters themselves recognized this connection when confronting the Exile. They explained these Sith had learned the lesson of Malachor too well, allowing them to prey on Force users and become stronger when Force sensitives were near. The Sith Triumvirate studied Malachor and created a hunting technique highly effective at wiping out Force-sensitive beings. With the Jedi already weakened, the Triumvirate launched their hunt. The KOTOR 2 opening crawl describes evil Sith spreading across the galaxy, hunting down and destroying remaining Jedi Knights. This wasn't random killing, but a planned pursuit across every system. The scale of destruction was unprecedented. Darth Nihilus consumed all life on the planet Qatar, wiping out nearly 100 Jedi Masters who had gathered there in a desperate attempt to coordinate a response, with only one surviving the massacre. Across the galaxy, surviving Jedi found themselves constantly fleeing. The Prima Guide describes the last known Jedi narrowly escaping a deadly ambush, clinging to life aboard a battered freighter. Even knowledge of surviving Jedi had become rare, and the hunt reduced the Order to individuals whose locations were largely unknown. The three Sith Lords served different functions in this hunt. Darth Nihilus represented pure consuming power, with Avalon describing him as the ultimate antagonist who embodied hunger and consumption as his sole purpose. Darth Sion handled direct combat, identified by the Prima Guide as the Lord of Pain, his body held together through rage and suffering alone. Darth Traya, the Betrayer, served as the strategic mind behind their operations. Despite internal tensions, these three cooperated effectively to hunt Jedi across the galaxy. Yet as they hunted, the Jedi Council's response revealed fatal strategic errors. Rather than mounting coordinated resistance or gathering their remaining strength, the Masters fragmented into hiding. Master Vrook hid on Dantooine. Master Kavar stayed near Duxun. Master Zez Kael concealed himself on Nar Shaddaa, and Master Atris built a hidden academy beneath ice on Telos, hoarding knowledge rather than fighting. Kreia later condemned their choices, pointing out that each master retreated near sources of dark side corruption, yet refused to recognize the patterns emerging around them. Even worse, the Council identified the wrong threat entirely. When the surviving masters finally gathered on Dantooine, they focused on the exile rather than the Sith hunting them. They declared she was a breach that must be closed, a wound in the Force that threatened everything. The Council viewed the exile as the primary threat. They feared she would teach others to sever themselves from the Force, not recognizing this might be the only defense against the Triumvirate. For them, institutional purity mattered more than survival. Their solution was punishment rather than strategy. They attempted to sever the exile's connection just as Kreia interrupted, challenging their passive approach. She asked how they could hope to know the threat when they had never walked in dark places or faced war on such a scale. Instead of waiting for their answer, Kreia forced them to experience the disconnection they had intended to impose. She showed them what it meant to see the galaxy through the eyes of the exile rather than through the Force. The Council died not through combat, but through their own chosen punishment, and with them went the last of the Jedi leadership. The first purge achieved near-total success in eliminating the Order as a functioning institution. Kreia assessed that the Jedi Order had been the heart of sustaining the Republic's sickness, and now that the Jedi were lost, the galaxy would see how long the Republic could survive. The purge destroyed not just Jedi, but Force knowledge itself. Kreia described how the Sith learned their hunger from the exile, bringing about the end of the Jedi and perhaps all knowledge of the Force. Malachor V remained as a permanent wound, with darkside energy creating terrain of jagged rock spires and treacherous paths, transforming living beings into monstrous forms. The few surviving Force users carried only fragments, scattered across the galaxy without an institutional framework, systematic training, or coordination. Yet, the first purge ultimately ended when the exile confronted each Sith Lord. By defeating Darth Nihilus, Darth Sion, and Darth Traya, Mitra Surik halted the Triumvirate's hunt and allowed the Jedi Order to eventually rebuild. Still, Kreia's final words pointed to a larger threat. One must go where Revan went into the unknown regions, where the true Sith wait for the great war that comes. The Triumvirate's purge was merely a prelude to a longer conflict. Every purge in that history succeeded through deception, hidden chips, manufactured crises, enemies the Jedi never saw coming. But there was one Sith who rejected all of it. No patience, no politics, no shadows. Darth Malgus believed the Jedi should be destroyed openly, in open war, by a stronger enemy willing to announce itself. And for a time, he nearly proved himself right. Darth Malgus was not always the monster we know him as today, because his devastating story actually started with him being just a young boy named Varadun, living in the hidden Sith Empire in 3700 BBY. Varadun's Force abilities manifested early and violently. As a young boy living with his adoptive father, an Imperial scientist, he deliberately chose to test the limits of his dark power. When one of the household's Twi'lek servants displeased him, Varadun reached out through the Force and snapped her neck with a simple thought. This wasn't an accident born from rage, but a calculated experiment to see what he was capable of. The cold precision of the act revealed the sinister potential lurking within the child. Rather than horror, his adoptive father felt only excitement. The boy had a future with the Sith. Imperial law demanded that all Force sensitives be sent for evaluation and training. No single Force user was left behind, as the Sith philosophy required using every tool to its fullest potential. Even slaves who showed Force sensitivity would be recruited for the upcoming war. The day before departure, his adoptive father imparted 3 crucial lessons during a zoo tour that would deeply influence Malgus's philosophy. These lessons about deception, expectations, and empty cages would shape his understanding of power and survival. Varadun was destined for the path of a Sith warrior. His large, muscular frame made this clear as he grew into manhood, but the next chapter would forge who he became, Darth Malgus. This video draws from Star Wars Legends, mainly The Old Republic and Paul S. Kemp's Deceived. It took a lot of research, so I hope you enjoy. The making of a monster. Varadun was sent to train on Dromund Kaas, where he demonstrated formidable lightsaber skills and aggressive combat techniques that would define his fighting style. Something unexpected happened during his academy years. While on a mission to Geonosis, young Varadun encountered a female Twi'lek slave being brutally beaten by her owner. He acted on compassion and freed her. He took her as his personal servant. Her name was Alina Daru. Because attachment was taboo among the Sith, Malgus kept Alina's true role hidden. Officially a servant, she was in truth his partner, devoted to him and often by his side in battle with dual blasters. The name change from Varadun to Malgus occurred when he was recruited for Sith training. While his political skills were non-existent, he possessed the mind of a prophet. His ability to draw on the dark side was exceptional. When battling enemies, his fury knew no limits. Had his political skills matched his physical prowess, he would have climbed the Empire's ladder much sooner. The return of the Sith. Eventually, Malgus was assigned to Sith Master Darth Vindican, a pureblood wielding a double-bladed lightsaber. Vindican trained Malgus briefly until the momentous time arrived, the Sith Empire's return to galactic prominence. Vindican and Malgus were appointed to the front lines for the initial assault on Korriban. During the assault, Vindican sensed Jedi on the orbital station and set their shuttle down to confront them. This battle became legendary, immortalized in an Old Republic cinematic. Malgus ultimately overpowered Jedi Battlemaster Kao Sendarak by drawing on an immense well of dark-side power. He pressed the advantage and overwhelmed Darak. He even nearly killed young Satel Shan before her master intervened. During this battle, Malgus demonstrated the Jarkai dual saber technique, using Vindican's weapon alongside his own to devastating effect. After striking down the Jedi Battlemaster, Malgus turned on his own defeated master and killed Vindican as well. Retaking Korriban was swift and calculated, an easy victory for the returning Sith Empire. After the battle, Darth Malgus walked the surface of Korriban, his ancient forebear's homeworld. During his pilgrimage to the Valley of the Dark Lords, the Force showed him a powerful vision. It revealed a system in flames, an entire galaxy-spanning government requiring cleansing by fire. From that moment forward, Malgus believed he was destined to be responsible for the fall of the Republic and its Jedi Order. The vision wasn't limited to the Republic that needed purification. In his short time in the galaxy, Malgus had learned that the Sith Empire had become weak. They limited themselves based on ancient dogma and irrelevant narratives about outsiders. Malgus knew the Empire had to be reformed and molded back into the power base it was meant to be. Everything this vision showed went against his training. For now, these revelations would sit in the back of his mind while he gained the wisdom to understand them fully. The Great Galactic War began after Korriban's retaking, lasting 28 years. During this conflict, Malgus played critical roles in numerous battles. His recovered journals explain his presence at Ord Radama, Endymion, and Bothaui. One of Malgus's chief rivals was Lord Adras, a political climber. On Ord Radama, Adras even tried to claim credit for Malgus's victory at Livian Magnus. In the Force, Adras was a lightweight compared with Malgus. In 3671 BBY, the Republic victory at Bothaui stalled the Empire's advance, a rare check on Sith momentum. As the war progressed, Malgus became well known by Sith and Jedi alike. His peers thought twice before angering him, and his name alone struck fear into Jedi hearts. He became known as a Butcher of Jedi, showing no mercy. It would be about 14 years after Korriban before Malgus earned the title of Darth, just before leading the assault on Alderaan in 3667 BBY. The Scars of Alderaan. By the time of the Hope trailer, Darth Malgus was 33 years old. He led a surprise attack on the core world of Alderaan with help from Shae Vizsla, a Mandalorian mercenary whose people were allied with the Sith Empire. The assault succeeded in bringing the planet to its knees through coordinated strikes. Victory turned to near disaster when Republic forces counterattacked. Havoc Squad arrived with Jedi Knight Satel Shan, who had grown tremendously since their encounter years earlier. This time, she defeated Malgus in battle by overpowering him with concentrated Force energy. The injuries Malgus sustained were severe. Satel's Force blast combined with a thermal detonator explosion that went off directly in his face. The collapse buried and crushed him, permanently damaging his lungs. This was why he later required a respirator. His lungs had been severely damaged. Even after being crushed by tons of stone, Malgus raised himself up again and continued fighting in different areas before retreating, likely with Shae Vizsla's help. In the aftermath, an enraged and injured Malgus hunted down a surviving Jedi, a Zabrak, and defeated him in the ruins, thinking back to his father's final lesson that sometimes there is only an empty cage offering no mercy. The Battle of Alderaan scarred his face and body forever. He turned the sting of failure into power for future victories. Alina nursed him back to health during his recovery before he put on his respirator mask. During the Cold War period following the Great Galactic War, Malgus took an apprentice named Darth Krayt. She had been a Jedi Padawan named Kana Terid under Master Nos Dural, until corruption turned her to the dark side. Malgus placed her in charge of a mighty superweapon called the Ascendant Spear. His apprentice was eventually killed by Republic SIS agent Theron Shan. The loss of his apprentice was meaningless to Malgus. To him, training an apprentice was merely a duty expected by the Sith Empire. He didn't mourn her death. This coldness toward loss would prove significant in shaping his ultimate choices. In 3653 BBY, during the sham peace talks on Alderaan, Darth Angral dispatched Malgus to strike the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. The Emperor intended this assault to force the Jedi into signing a peace treaty that would end the war and declare the Sith Empire victorious. Darth Angral's simultaneous peace talks forced the Republic to capitulate once the capital fell. Malgus didn't learn of the peace treaty plan until after the battle was completed. This deception would have profound consequences on his loyalty to the Empire. The sacking of Coruscant. The assault on Coruscant represented the Empire's most audacious strike. Sith forces hit multiple targets simultaneously, while the Senate was distracted by fake peace negotiations. Malgus led his warriors straight into the Jedi Temple's main hall, his crimson lightsaber cutting through defenders with efficient brutality. Alina Daru joined him for this critical battle. Over the years, she had become skilled with blaster pistols and proved capable of defending herself in combat. Her presence served a deeper purpose. She remained his anchor to something beyond pure destruction. When the dark side threatened to consume him completely, her face reminded him that choice still existed. During the chaos, Malgus confronted Jedi Master Ven Zalo, a respected temple guardian whose defensive mastery nearly matched Malgus's overwhelming aggression. Their duel was fierce and personal. At one point, Zalo's precise hilt strike actually dislodged one of Malgus's teeth, a detail that would become legend. Still dueling Malgus, Zalo redirected Alina's blaster fire into her and then hurled her into a column with the Force. The sound of her voice cut through Malgus's battle fury. He saw her lying wounded, clutching her side where the blaster bolt had burned through her clothing. In that moment, the careful control he had maintained for years shattered completely. Dark energy surged through him as he overwhelmed Zalo's defenses through sheer brutal force. When the Jedi Master finally fell, Malgus stood over his corpse. Alina whispered his true name, Veradun. She spoke his birth name in front of Sith and soldiers alike. His carefully maintained facade of pure Sith dedication was compromised in front of witnesses. After the temple's fall, Malgus rushed Alina to medical facilities. He demanded she receive treatment worthy of a Sith Lord, not a mere alien servant. When Imperial doctors protested that resources weren't allocated for non-humans, Malgus's fury made his position unmistakably clear. He made it plain that they would treat her, or else. The damage to his reputation was already done. Lord Adras, his rival who had witnessed the battle, reported Malgus's obvious attachment to their superiors. When Malgus met with Darth Angral to discuss the Empire's next moves, the conversation quickly turned to examining his relationship with Alina. The price of weakness. Angral questioned why Malgus showed such concern for a mere servant. Malgus was forced to lie, claiming she was simply a useful tool he didn't want damaged. The explanation satisfied no one. Adras interfered by diverting Alina to an understaffed alien ward, effectively sabotaging her care out of spite and political maneuvering. The confrontation between Malgus and Adras nearly erupted into violence right there in Angral's office. Only their superior's intervention prevented immediate bloodshed. He was shunted to orbital blockade duty, a clear punishment after rivals exposed his attachment. During his blockade duty, Malgus learned devastating news that would reshape his entire worldview. The Emperor had planned the Coruscant assault specifically to force a peace treaty. The war was ending not in total Sith victory, but in negotiated settlement. The notion of peace in any capacity was a betrayal of the Sith code. Malgus could not accept this outcome, and his vision from his youth became crystal clear. A cleansing fire must sweep the galaxy and put an end to failing legacies. For now, he would bide his time and wait for the Force to present an opportunity to act on his prophetic vision. During his frustrating blockade assignment, Malgus encountered a suspicious shuttle attempting to run their checkpoint. The ship's occupants claimed to be spice runners, but the Force warned him something dangerous was aboard. When he attempted to stop the battle, its pilot cursed him and tried to flee. Malgus's forces shot them down, watching the craft crash in a fiery explosion on Coruscant's surface. He could feel through the Force that the Jedi still lived. Research revealed the truth. The shuttle carried Aaron Lanier, former Padawan of Master Ven Zalo, the same Jedi whose deflected blaster shot had wounded Alina. She had gone rogue after sensing her master's death through their Force bond, abandoning the Jedi Order to seek personal revenge against the Sith who had killed him. The ultimate sacrifice. Malgus realized Aaron was hunting him specifically. He decided to hunt her first. He knew exactly where she would go. The ruined Jedi Temple, desperately seeking answers about her master's final moments and the identity of his killer. He waited in the darkness like a predator, hovering above the temple in his personal shuttle. When Aaron finally arrived, the warrior struck with overwhelming force. He leapt from his shuttle, plunging over 100 meters. Lightsaber ignited, he crashed through the temple's ruins and landed nearly on top of his target. Their battle was vicious and deeply personal. Malgus taunted the Jedi. He even equipped and activated Zalo's recovered green lightsaber to mock her grief. This Jedi was different from the others he had faced. Aaron Lanier fought with raw emotion, using her pain and anger as weapons rather than trying to suppress them. She proved strong enough to knock him back with force pushes, agile enough to evade his lightning attacks, and skilled enough to duel him effectively. During their confrontation, she managed to escape with help from her pilot ally, but not before making a chilling promise. Before retreating, Aaron told Malgus she would find a way to hurt him. Then it struck him. If Lanier had accessed the temple's recordings, she would have seen his outburst over Alina. She had seen his greatest weakness. It was not a risk Malgus was willing to take. For the first time in his adult life, he felt genuine fear, not for himself, but for someone he cared about. He tried to contact Alina immediately, but failed to reach her. Malgus ordered his men to go to her location and ensure her safety. By the time he arrived, his worst fears were confirmed. The Jedi had already taken Alina captive. His fury erupted. Everything he had worked to build, every reputation he had crafted, was being threatened by this single Jedi's quest for revenge. Aaron Lanier forced Malgus into an impossible decision. She would allow her Republic allies to leave the planet unharmed, or she would kill the Twi'lek woman. Swallowing his pride and rage, Malgus obeyed her demands and gave her friends safe passage off-world. The humiliation burned worse than any physical wound. A Jedi had forced him to compromise his military duties through emotional manipulation. Everything the Sith taught about attachment being weakness was being proven correct in the most painful way possible. Their final confrontation was everything Malgus had expected and dreaded. Aaron fought with passionate intensity, fueled by grief for her dead master. She lacked the pure hatred necessary to truly embrace the dark side's full power. When Malgus unleashed his complete strength, Force lightning charged with years of suppressed fury, he overpowered her defenses completely. Aaron lay broken and burned on the landing pad, her skin badly scorched by the lightning. Malgus could have killed her easily with a simple gesture. Instead, he made an unexpected choice that revealed the depth of his internal transformation. He returned her lightsabers and allowed her to depart Coruscant unharmed. She had shown him what he must do next, so he let her go. As the dust settled, Malgus rushed to Alina's side. When Alina awakened in his arms after the battle, she whispered the words that had sustained them both through years of secrecy and danger. She loved him. For the first time in their relationship, Malgus said the words back. He loved her too. That was what was wrong. Love was a chain, a vulnerability the Jedi had just exploited. Attachment made him weak, and that weakness led to defeat. He made the choice that would define everything that followed. Malgus stood, ignited his crimson lightsaber, and drove it through Alina's heart. She died with shock and confusion in her eyes, unable to understand why the man who had saved her was now destroying her. Her last expression haunted him. Not anger or fear, but pure bewilderment at this ultimate betrayal from her rescuer and protector. Malgus understood perfectly. He had cut away the last thing that could be used against him. The tears he shed as Alina fell were the last he would ever shed. The part of him capable of compassion died with her on that landing pad. In the moments after her death, Malgus confronted Lord Adras, who had called his servant a mongrel to his face in their previous meeting. He butchered Adras, snarling that men like him had poisoned the Empire by trading strength for hollow peace. With love finally purged from his heart, he became the perfect Sith weapon. His vision was now in total clarity. The Emperor and his lackeys had adopted peace with the Jedi and Republic, going against everything the Sith represented. A war had ended with no true victor, a conflict concluded through negotiation rather than domination. He developed what would become his driving philosophy. There could be no peace with the Jedi, no truce. There could be no peace at all. Not ever. Over the next 10 years, he patiently built his power base. With the fame that came from the sacking of Coruscant, Malgus finally became a high authority figure within the Empire, even briefly holding a seat on the Dark Council after Darth Arho's fall. He oversaw special operations carried out by the Imperial Army and other Sith Lords. When he wasn't directly working for the Empire, he secretly conspired against it. In his spare time, he recruited allies and built relationships with various species, including Trandoshan warriors and alien scientists. Unlike other Sith, Malgus believed diversity made them stronger, not weaker. He even covertly aided the Republic against certain Imperial rivals like Darth Arho, leaking their plans to remove opposition and solidify his power. He recruited a scientist named Arcus Woad, who helped access Rakatan technology from the Foundry. They even found and repaired the legendary assassin droid HK-47, adding this formidable weapon to Malgus's growing arsenal. Eventually, rumors spread that a Jedi had faced the Emperor on Dromund Kaas and defeated him. The Emperor's mysterious silence reinforced the rumor's apparent truth. With the Sith Emperor seemingly eliminated, Malgus knew his time to strike had finally arrived. The New Empire. Malgus moved decisively to seize control of Imperial assets. He asserted himself on the world of Ilum, where the Empire was harvesting Adagan crystals. Whether the Dark Council had actually sent him, or this was an elaborate deception, remained unclear. Either way, Darth Malgus betrayed the Empire in favor of rebuilding a new one according to his revolutionary vision. His new empire would not allow the Jedi to exist or permit any peace to take hold. It would recruit all alien species, wasting no untapped potential. After securing the Adagan crystals on Ilum, he stole and occupied the Emperor's mobile fortress. His ally, Arcus Woad, used the Adagan crystals to power their stealth fleet. The entire armada carried cloaking devices, rendering it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. This technological advantage would give them the element of surprise in any conflict. The Dark Council strongly disapproved of Malgus's coup attempt. They sent a strike team to eliminate him and his rebellion. The first team assaulted his power base on Ilum, capturing or killing many of his high-value assets and leaders. Defectors were hunted down across Imperial space. The strike team eventually located him aboard his stolen fortress. On their way to the final confrontation, they defeated HK-47 and captured or killed Arcus Woad. Before his defeat, Malgus initiated the station's self-destruct. The final battle took place in the former Emperor's throne room, where Malgus had declared himself the new Emperor. The seat belonged to him now, as only those strong enough to seize it could keep it. He had proven his strength by seizing the most secure fortress in Sith space. Ultimately, Malgus was defeated in the Emperor's throne room and left for dead as the station exploded. The combined assault team proved too much even for his enhanced abilities. He was left inside the space station when it exploded in a massive fireball visible from orbit. To the known galaxy, Malgus died in that moment. This was not the end of his story. Over a decade later, Darth Malgus's death proved to be a carefully orchestrated deception. It was revealed that the Sith Empire had actually captured him from the wreckage and held him in a carbonite prison. When the Empire finally returned to open conflict with the Republic, Malgus emerged and seemed loyal to his former masters once again. The truth was far more sinister. Empress Asina had kept Malgus on a tight leash via pain implants and conditioning, using him as their enforcer against the Jedi. While under their control, he spearheaded the attack on Corellia's Meridian complex and dueled Jedi Knight Taui Dare amid the burning shipyards. On Osis, he struck down Jedi Master Nostaral, leaving him gravely wounded. The Empire would learn that keeping Malgus alive was a catastrophic mistake. When his control chip failed, Malgus woke free and demanded release. The mind domination he had endured was severe, requiring him to seek out Jedi artifacts on Dantooine to heal his damaged psyche. To break his conditioning, he raided the Dantooine Enclave and seized a Darth Nul holocron. Using knowledge related to the powers the Jedi Council had used to rearrange Revan's mind, Malgus succeeded in breaking his mental chains to the Empire. Aaron Lanier even felt his presence return there, full circle from their last clash. Now roughly 75 years old, Malgus operates alone, hunting forbidden tech. On Ilum, he stormed the Temple of Nul, fought Master Orr and his Padawan, and condemned both Jedi and Sith for hoarding power. He hunts for Darth Nul's relics and other superweapons to ignite the cleansing fire from his vision. Malgus wanted to burn the galaxy clean and rebuild it stronger. He died a prisoner of the very empire he served. His vision unrealized, his new order collapsed before it began. And yet, by the standards of the ancient Sith, he understood something that the one who actually won never did. Because when every Sith Lord who ever lived is measured against what Palpatine ultimately became, not one of them would have called it a victory. Every ancient Sith who ever lived would have judged Palpatine as a failure. Not because he failed to gain power, but because he destroyed everything the Sith stood for while winning. This judgment is possible because ancient Sith preserved their philosophy through spirits, holocrons, and temples that still function thousands of years later. On Moraband, Darth Bane's presence lingers in the ancient tombs, demonstrating a philosophy that lasted 1,000 years. On Malachor, the temple continues testing seekers thousands of years after its construction, guarding secrets that have been buried with the dead for millennia. Lord Momin's consciousness survived within his mask for just as long, and when Darth Vader recovered it, Momin evaluated his training and found it corrupt at the source. Exar Kun's spirit achieved similar persistence in the Yavin 4 temples, influencing those who entered for 4,000 years after his death. These preserved consciousnesses contain the values and judgments of their era, allowing us to measure Palpatine against standards recorded in Sith tradition. Across both canon and legends, from the old Sith Empire to Darth Bane's rule of two, Sith philosophy remained remarkably consistent. Whether ruling openly or hiding in shadows, knowledge preservation, succession through combat, and eventual open rule defined what it meant to be Sith. These principles allowed the Sith to survive for 5,000 years, despite repeated defeats and near extinction. By these standards, Palpatine betrayed the entire tradition. 5 specific reasons explain why every ancient Sith would have despised him, despite his unprecedented success. First, the ancient Sith established succession through proven strength thousands of years before Bane formalized the rule of two. In the Golden Age of the Sith, Marka Ragnos ruled the Sith Empire for over a century, and when he died, his spirit appeared to declare that the victor between Naga Sadow and Ludo Kresh would rule, because strength determined leadership. The strongest rose, while the weak fell, and every transition of power proved the new ruler deserved the position. This was not cruelty, but philosophy. The Sith Order could only grow stronger if its leaders earned their place through demonstrated superiority. When Naga Sadow's empire collapsed after his failed invasion of the Republic, he fled to Yavin 4, but still trained Frida Nad in the ways of the Sith. Nad eventually surpassed his master and claimed power for himself on Onderon. Centuries later, according to Tales of the Jedi, Exar Kun sought out Nad's spirit for instruction, then destroyed that spirit to prove his own superiority and claim the title of Dark Lord. Each generation overthrew the previous because that overthrow demonstrated growth. For millennia, this cycle defines Sith succession. Student surpasses teacher, takes the mantle, trains the next generation, and eventually falls to a stronger successor. Darth Bane studied these ancient traditions and preserved their core philosophy in the Rule of Two. He reduced the number from thousands to 2, but the principle remained the same. The apprentice must eventually surpass and destroy the master. In the Darth Bane trilogy, he informed his apprentice Zana that when her power eclipsed his, he would become expendable, and that she must eliminate him to claim the mantle of Dark Lord. He accepted this future and planned for it, understanding that his death at her hands would prove the Sith grew stronger with each generation. Similarly, in the Clone Wars episode Sacrifice, his presence on Moraband still challenged visitors to kill him to gain his place, demonstrating that this ancient principle survived through his reforms. Bane acknowledged he might never see the Sith triumph, accepting that centuries might pass before victory. He reflected that the path ahead would be long and difficult, potentially taking years, decades, or even centuries before the Sith could strike at the Jedi once more. Though he himself might not live to see the triumph of the dark side, those following him would carry on his legacy. Bane built a system expecting he would never witness its ultimate success, accepting his own mortality as necessary for the tradition's strength. Though Palpatine achieved everything the ancient Sith and Bane dreamed of, he refused to be replaced. A millennium of patient planning culminated in total victory when the Jedi fell, the Sith ruled, and the galaxy bowed to a Dark Lord. However, He then did something no ancient Sith or Bainite successor ever imagined possible. The Legends novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader reveals his true intention. Once Sidious achieved immortality through the dark side, there would be no real reason to have an apprentice except to honor tradition. He planned to rule alone forever, transforming succession from a sacred principle into a ceremonial gesture without purpose. Both Plagueis and Sidious believed they had transcended Bane's system. According to the Darth Plagueis novel, Plagueis maintained that the rule of two had ended with their partnership. They would rule together, immortal, never needing successors. Sidious killed him for that belief, then adopted the exact same philosophy himself. Once he achieved immortality, he planned to rule alone with powerless apprentices who could never threaten him. Plagueis failed because he thought the rule of two no longer applied to him. Sidious failed for the same reason. Vader discovered the suit was never meant to make him stronger, but to keep him weak. He recognized that the damaged body and constant pain were designed to ensure that the apprentice could never challenge his master. Sidious did not save Vader on Mustafar out of compassion, but allowed him to burn and then rebuilt him weaker than before. When Vader confronted Sidious about this, gesturing to his scarred face and mechanical limbs, he asked whether these were the faces of victory. Sidious could not answer. Palpatine revealed his true philosophy when he told Vader that Vader's power was his power. This was not the rule of two, but ownership. Bane expected apprentices to grow until they could kill their masters. Palpatine expected Vader's strength to remain an extension of his own will forever. His strategy remained clear throughout his reign: maintain whatever apprentice survived as long as they remained controllable rather than superior. Ancient Sith and Bainite traditions alike required stronger successors to replace weaker masters, but Sidious inverted this principle completely. The second reason involves how ancient Sith preserved knowledge for future generations, while Palpatine hoarded it for himself. On Malachor, the ancient Sith embedded their philosophy into architecture itself. The temple's holocron waited thousands of years, guarded by a presence that tested seekers with questions about knowledge and power. Anonymous Sith who died millennia ago still taught students they would never meet, and though their names were forgotten, their teachings endured. Freedon Nad exemplified this dedication to teaching across generations. 4 centuries after his death, his spirit still sought Force sensitives to instruct. According to Tales of the Jedi, his ghost promised to find and teach any worthy student wherever they went. This was not passive preservation, but active membership. Nad understood that a Sith Lord's duty extended beyond their own lifetime, and death was not an excuse to stop teaching. Nad died once and taught for 400 years. Palpatine died twice and taught no one. Ancient Sith created holocrons recording their knowledge of sorcery, alchemy, and the dark side. Each generation added to the collective understanding, building a library of dark side wisdom that spanned millennia. In the Rebels episode, The Holocrons of Fate, the Bendu described Sith holocrons as keepers of shadow lore, warning that combining them could reveal any secret, wisdom, or destiny through the Force. Ancient Sith recorded their teachings so future generations could build upon them and potentially achieve levels of insight no single Sith could reach alone. Darth Bane understood this ancient principle and nearly killed himself preserving it. In the Darth Bane trilogy, Bane failed 3 times creating his holocron. Each attempt took months of gathering rare crystals and fashioning intricate matrices, only to end in glimmering dust. He kept trying anyway, because holocrons had been the most valuable tool for passing on the legacy of great Sith Lords for many centuries. Bane understood that knowledge must survive the one who holds it, and personal triumph meant nothing if the wisdom died with the victor. He succeeded on his 4th attempt because preserving knowledge for those who came after mattered more than any personal frustration. Palpatine had access to everything those ancient Sith created, yet used none of it to build forward. Plagueis showed Sidious authentic Bainite holocrons containing wisdom accumulated by generations of Sith Lords, each acting to the collective understanding of the dark side. Sidious studied them, learned from them, and understood their purpose completely, but never created one himself. Instead, he placed forgeries in the Jedi Temple as Sith disinformation while hoarding real knowledge. These fake holocrons served as deceptions designed to mislead anyone who found them. Ancient Sith recorded wisdom for successors, while Palpatine recorded lies for enemies and nothing for the future. Sidious even acknowledged that ancient Sith possessed the very immortality knowledge he sought, but it was lost due to poor preservation. He understood the lesson that failure to properly preserve knowledge meant losing it forever, then repeated the exact same mistake by pursuing immortality secrets while creating nothing that would survive him. For the third reason, Lord Momin directly condemned Palpatine's teaching after surviving for thousands of years. In the Darth Vader 2017 comic series, Momin's consciousness had survived within his mask, giving him a perspective no living being possessed. When he evaluated Vader's training, he believed that he had been poorly taught about what the dark side is and why the Sith must serve it. He assessed that Vader's master was either ignorant or hoarding knowledge and expressed sadness at seeing the Sith become Jedi-obsessed weaklings. This represented an ancient Sith explicitly condemning modern Sith philosophy based on standards preserved across millennia. Momin explained what Palpatine refused to accept. The dark side does not serve its users, but rather, they serve it. If the Sith glorify the dark side through their acts, their work, and their art, it gives them power and even life eternal. His own survival proved this point, as he noted that empires had risen and fallen since his birth, and great ages of the galaxy had passed, yet he still remained. Thousands of years had passed, and he persisted through proper service to the dark side, while Palpatine would die at his apprentice's hands because he tried to make the dark side serve him rather than the reverse. The ancient Sith understood that the dark side is sacred but also hungry, and it must always be fed. Those who serve it properly receive power, but those who try to hoard it or make it serve personal ambitions find themselves consumed. Momin survived thousands of years, while Palpatine died within one generation, proving which philosophy actually worked. He posed one question that destroys everything Palpatine taught. He asked Vader why, if the greatest power in the galaxy was truly his to control, his wife was dead. She was not alive because the teaching had failed, and the promise was a lie. Palpatine told Anakin the dark side could prevent death, yet Padme died anyway. The dark side grants power to those who serve it properly, not those who try to command it for personal desires. Momin understood this truth, while Palpatine never did. The fourth reason involves how ancient Sith trained apprentices as genuine successors, while Palpatine manufactured disposable weapons. The Korriban academies trained dozens of students simultaneously, with masters dedicating years to developing their potential. The weak died and the strong rose, but every student received genuine instruction in Sith philosophy, combat, and the dark side of the Force. Ancient Sith masters wanted their apprentices to surpass them because superior apprentices meant a stronger order. Training a successor was not a burden, but a duty, and the greatest Sith Lords were remembered as much for who they trained as for what they conquered. The tombs on Korriban were designed not just as monuments, but as final tests, continuing to teach any student worthy enough to survive their trials. Star Wars: The Old Republic shows that Tulak Horde personally trained warriors who went on to become legendary in their own right. Mark Aragnos mentored an entire generation of Sith Lords during his century of rule, shaping the very nature of Sith civilization. Even the spirits of dead Sith continued to instruct the living, appearing to guide promising students toward their destiny. The ancient Sith understood that investing in apprentices strengthened the entire order and ensured the tradition would survive any individual's death. Palpatine, however, treated every apprentice as a tool with an expiration date. In the Rebels episode Twilight of the Apprentice, Maul explained that the Sith took everything from him by ripping him from his mother's arms, murdering his brother, using him as a weapon, and then casting him aside. He recalled that he once had power, but now had nothing. This was not the complaint of a failed apprentice who lost in fair combat, but the testimony of someone who was never given the chance to succeed. In the Legends novel Darth Plagueis, Sidious admitted that Maul was not an apprentice and not someone who could ever aspire to become a true Sith Lord, but simply someone skilled in stealth and combat who could be eliminated when no longer needed. This represented disposal through convenience rather than succession through strength. Maul was never trained to surpass his master, but only to serve until he was no longer useful. When Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated him on Naboo, Sidious did not mourn a potential successor, but simply acquired a new tool in Count Dooku. Dooku received the same treatment, and when Anakin Skywalker proved more promising, Sidious engineered Dooku's death without hesitation. Every apprentice was disposable, every successor temporary, every heir designed to fail. Even after Sidious abandoned him, Maul still sought an apprentice because the Sith drive to train a successor ran that deep. On Malachor, Maul claimed Ezra Bridger as his apprentice, and he genuinely wanted Ezra to join him. Maul had lost his brother, Savage Opress, and spent years alone, and he saw in Ezra a potential companion and successor. He taught Ezra that anger was a wellspring and that passions give strength. Yet Maul was so broken by Sidious that the only way he knew to build a relationship was through manipulation and exploitation. He used their force bond to torment Ezra, tried to sever him from his friends, and ultimately used him to draw out Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ancient Sith trained successors to carry on their legacy, but Maul could only replicate what Sidious had done to him. Palpatine's corruption ran so deep that even the genuine impulse to train an apprentice became twisted into exploitation. Finally, the ancient Sith who founded and shaped the Order would condemn how Palpatine achieved his victory. Ancient Sith valued strength proven through direct confrontation. On Malachor, the scale of ancient Sith ambition remains visible in stone. The temple was not a hidden bunker, but a monument powerful enough that the Jedi attacked with thousands of warriors in open battle. The ancient Sith announced their power to the galaxy. They fought openly, died openly, and left monuments to their strength that still stand millennia later. The petrified warriors on Malachor testified to a battle so massive it transformed both sides into stone, yet the temple survived as a testament to Sith resolve. Order 66 was the opposite. Clones executing hidden programming, shooting generals in the back, betraying commanders who trusted them. Ki-Adi-Mundi was gunned down by soldiers he led. Troops gunned down Aayla Secura, and Plo Koon's own wingmen shot down his starfighter. The Emperor achieved victory through manufactured crises, Senate votes, and soldiers who did not even know they served the Sith cause. Ancient Sith would have called this cowardice, not conquest. This deception would have disgusted Ajunta Pall, who, in Knights of the Old Republic, founded the Sith Order on Korriban with the explicit intention of building something that would outlast him. Paul and the other Dark Jedi exiles created a civilization, not a conspiracy. They built temples, established academies, and trained generations of successors. Thousands of years after his death, his tomb still taught lessons to those who entered, and his ghost still reflected on the legacy he had created. Palpatine, however, structured everything around his permanent survival, then allowed the Order to die with him. Paul would see the Emperor as an anti-founder who destroyed what the first Dark Lord created. For 5,000 years, ancient Sith failed to destroy the Jedi, yet Palpatine succeeded and then destroyed the Sith himself. The Great Hyperspace War ended in Naga Sadow's defeat, and Exar Kun's war concluded in the same failure. Mandalorian Wars and Jedi Civil War weakened the Republic but never broke the Order. Even the massive battle on Malachor produced no clear victor. Despite every assault across 5 millennia, the Jedi survived by adapting, rebuilding, and enduring. No matter how powerful the Sith became, or how devastating their attacks proved, the Jedi Order always found a way to continue. Palpatine achieved what his predecessors could not when Order 66 destroyed the Jedi Order completely. This was the culmination of 1,000 years of planning, the ultimate goal every Bainite Sith had worked toward. He accomplished the impossible goal that motivated a millennium of Bainite succession by winning the war that every previous Sith had lost. Then, he destroyed the future by failing to ensure anyone could continue what he built. When Vader killed Palpatine, the Rule of Two worked exactly as designed, yet it destroyed the tradition along with the Master. When Vader threw him down the reactor shaft on the second Death Star, no heir existed to continue the Sith lineage. Palpatine had sabotaged every potential successor. At the celebration on Endor, Luke Skywalker saw 3 Force ghosts: Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker, redeemed and returned to the light. 3 Jedi spirits endured, while 0 Sith remained. Palpatine had promised Anakin the power to cheat death, seducing him with visions of saving Padme and promises that the dark side offered abilities the Jedi considered unnatural. He never taught the technique. The Jedi he tried to exterminate achieved immortality through the Force, while the Sith tradition he claimed to master ended in permanent extinction. Even resurrection could not save Palpatine's legacy. In Dark Empire, he returned in cloned bodies, yet still created no holocron, trained no true successor, and preserved no teachings. He achieved a form of immortality and repeated the same mistakes that led to his first death. The clones were vessels for his consciousness, not students to train. He returned from death having learned nothing and changed nothing. Momin failed to destroy a city and called it failure, then sought to improve his next creation. Palpatine succeeded in destroying the Jedi and called it victory, then made the exact same errors when given a second chance. Even the heretic whose teachings the Sith rejected understood what the Emperor never grasped. Failure teaches, but only if you learn. Sidious called the ancient Sith fools for sharing power, yet their order survived 5,000 years, while his died with him. He dismissed their entire civilization as a mistake, yet the Sith he mocked built an order that endured through empires rising and falling, through wars lost and won, and through near extinction and resurgence. Sidious ended the Sith by refusing to share power with even one worthy successor. The Sith Code, preserved for 5,000 years, concludes with a promise that through victory, chains are broken, and the Force grants freedom. Victory was meant to bring liberation, but Palpatine's victory created new chains instead. He trapped Vader in a broken body designed to keep him weak, abandoned Maul when he was no longer useful, and bound himself to constant vigilance against any successor who might threaten him. The Sith Code promises freedom through the dark side, yet Palpatine used the dark side to imprison everyone, himself included. The Sith Lord who called the ancient Sith fools would be remembered by those same ancient Sith as the greatest fool of all, not because he failed to gain power, but because he failed to understand what every Sith before him knew. Power without legacy is just noise before silence. Victory without continuation is just a longer path to the same defeat. The 1,000-year lineage Bane created ended not in glorious succession, but in total extinction. Palpatine's story doesn't end with the ancient Sith's judgment of him. It stretches across decades of manipulation, war, and the systematic dismantling of everything the galaxy trusted. The full rise and fall of the Sith across every era is on the channel, and so is the complete history of Palpatine himself, the man every ancient Sith would have called their greatest failure. Be sure to watch them next.